laterally. In an instant, two formidable beams of light pierced through the air, disappearing into the forest behind. A nearby mountain was caught in the path of the beams. Its trees evaporated and countless stones melted in their wake. The power was immense, yet it was empty. Emoli maintained his composure, quickly locking onto the two high-energy particle beam turrets and descending into the city streets. Upon witnessing the two beams, the pirates within the city sensed something amiss and, driven by their instinct for survival, fled at once. As he soared through the streets, the buildings blurred past him. Emoli cast a cold gaze upon the fleeing pirates below, recalling the nearly negligible long-range offensive capabilities of Blood Debt. Two concealed cannons nestled beneath the wrists. Weapons utterly futile in mech battles, yet designed solely for the extermination of humanity, unveiled their fangs in that moment. Twin tongues of fire erupted from the blood-stained wrists. The elongated energy chain striking a fleeing space pirate, cleaving his body in twain with a swift brutality. With a slight lift of the wrist, the chain was drawn forward, grazing the arm of another pirate, which erupted into a mist of crimson. As the chain swept through, the street rapidly transformed into a tapestry of blood. A shocking scarlet carpet unfurling before the eyes. The screams of the space pirates escalated in intensity. Had this been a typical city, mechs would have already been deployed to intercept Emoli. Yet, this was the domain of the space pirates. Those capable of piloting mechs were still in search of them. While those already in control hesitated, wary of the mech's origins, each one reluctant to be the first to draw attention. Emoli soared forth, bathing an entire street in blood, and no one dared to obstruct him. He remained vigilant, fully aware that the absence of interference signified the gathering of mech forces by the enemy. A sense of impending peril washed over him, and instinctively, he surged forward. A high-energy particle beam pierced through two towering edifices, leaving a massive crater in its wake beside Emoli. Accompanying this laser was a swiftly approaching mech. The adversary bore no visible weapon, yet its speed was extraordinary. A chill coursed through Emoli. It appeared this was one of the two executioners from the Disorder Gang. The Momentum Sovereign, Faye. Moreover, it was a rare combat mech. Realizing the identity of his foe, Emoli swiftly maneuvered to the side, using his auxiliary engines. Just as Faye barreled through his position, crashing violently into the ground. A deep thud resonated as the roadway fractured, spiderweb-like cracks radiating from beneath Faye's feet, twisting and climbing the adjacent buildings, one of which crumbled instantly. "Run, little insect," echoed a maniacal laughter from his loudspeakers. Faye, knees bent, coiled like a taut bow, gathered force to unleash a devastating blow. The ground trembled once more, a massive pit forming where he struck. Faye transformed into a shadow, hurtling toward Emoli, who could almost perceive the exhilaration gleaming in his opponent's eyes through the dark visor. As they drew near, a simple yet powerful punch was unleashed. Emoli could already envision himself parrying the strike, only to be obliterated by its force. Yet Emoli had discerned the nature of Faye's mech, narrowly evading the punch with a perilous sidestep. In response, he executed an upward hook from the blood pact, landing squarely on Faye's chest. Faye felt a constriction in his chest, followed by a searing pain in his abdomen. As he instinctively attempted to raise his arm, he was met with a sensation of delay coursing through it, followed by a sharp ache in his shoulder. "What is this?" Faye thought in horror, disregarding his pride as he bellowed skyward, his voice resonating across the public channel of the Disorder Gang. "What are you waiting for? All of you charge." In the next instant, over a dozen mechs surged forth. In the distance, two mechs hoisted an enormous cannon measuring over 10 meters in length, aiming it at the center of the battlefield. Amidst the emergence of their silhouettes and the formidable foe before him, Emoli suddenly felt a surge of exhilaration. The sound of a heartbeat echoed like a drumbeat amidst the multitude of mechs. Unyielding in his pursuit of Faye, Emoli unleashed a powerful kick, sending his adversary soaring through the air. The force of the blow was immense, propelling Faye uncontrollably upwards. In that fleeting moment of separation between Emoli and Faye, the two colossal mechs equipped with heavy cannons in the distance swiftly locked onto Emoli with their fire control radars. The opposing forces achieved dual fire control lock in less than a second, and a wave of exhilaration washed over them as they instinctively squeezed the triggers. However, the launch required time, as the fire control system automatically tracked Emoli's position after locking on. Their expressions paled instantaneously for Emoli. Sensing the impending attack as others instinctively moved aside, suddenly ascended with great speed. This sequence of events unfolded in an instant. By the time the colossal cannon unleashed its firepower upon the locked target, Emoli had already caught up with the airborne Faye. A brilliant beam illuminated the night sky of the city, piercing through Faye. In that very moment, as Faye raised his shield to block the luminous strike, Emoli descended rapidly. Utilizing the momentum of his fall, his assault became even fiercer. The other mechs could only witness the two trails of blood debt soaring toward the nearest fortress-class mech. The psychological impact of having even the punishment-class Fey felled was profound. Instinctively, he emptied his missile bay before the fire control could lock on. The 8th punishment-class combat mech, devoid of missile lock, found itself evaded by Mo Lee in a swift maneuver, his speed unabated as the blood pack transformed into dual blades. Previously, he had held back to protect the mechs, but given the current circumstances, Mo Lee would not spare any effort for the sake of mere monetary gain. This was the moment he truly showcased his prowess. As they engaged in close quarters, the blood pack struck with lightning speed, prompting the opponent to deploy a square energy shield. A resounding clang echoed as frost spread, a deluge of cryogenic fluid erupting to freeze both the blade and the shield. Observing this, the space pirate wore a perplexed expression, and in that moment, other pirates joined the fray. With a sharp crack, the connection between the blade and the blood debt severed, leaving the pirate even more bewildered, yet he swiftly retreated. Mo Lee, clutching the remaining blade, effortlessly snapped it free from its connection, then surged forth with renewed vigor. Both mechs were fortress class, yet their speeds were worlds apart. Mo Lee easily caught up. At this moment, the pirates behind seemed to receive a command, halting simultaneously as all missile bays, laser emitters, and high-energy particle cannons began to charge. The incessant beeping of fire control scanning filled the air, but Mo Lee paid no heed. Upon reaching the mech, he forcefully thrust the severed blade into the cockpit. Searing plasma flooded the cockpit, fusing the pilot with the seat. Extracting the blade, the distant mech forces had already locked onto Mo Lee with their fire control systems. With a swift motion, he withdrew the spire connected to the mech's arm, raising both blades high. The points collided with tremendous force, forming a spear that was tipped on both ends, one half blue, the other red. A resonant clang echoed once more. The crisp sound of collision echoed, and simultaneously, a dazzling array of missile energy and laser bursts converged before him, forming a magnificent barrage. Mo Lee maintained an expression of indifference, yet his heart raced. Two streams of energy, one red and one blue, erupted simultaneously from the ends of his spear. He deftly tilted his head to evade a laser cannon, then sidestepped to avoid an electromagnetic cannon, before the spear-shaped blood pact in his hand began to spin. A laser struck the whirling red and blue ring, deviating and piercing through the adjacent building, incinerating two star pirates who wore expressions of sheer terror. Clang, clang, clang. The sound of relentless impacts rang out, as all energy and laser weapons struck the ring, deflecting harmlessly away. The vector thrusters were simultaneously cranked to maximum power, charged but not yet released. The blood debt mech trembled slightly, and then, with a whoosh, the tail flames suddenly thickened, scorching two charred craters into the ground behind. Mo Lee abruptly surged into the midst of the barrage, and at that moment, all his auxiliary engines roared to life. The distant star pirates beheld a scene they would never forget. They witnessed the enigmatic mech navigating through the air, each evasive maneuver executed with impeccable precision. The slightest lean or tilt allowed it to effortlessly dodge missiles. Meanwhile, energy weapons were deflected by that peculiar spear. Detonate! Someone bellowed. If the missiles could not hit their target, they would simply be triggered, and their power should not be underestimated. Boom, boom, boom. All the missiles detonated, triggering a chain reaction that ignited a vast expanse of flames in the sky, even obscuring the heavens. Among the star pirate mechs, the foremost one landed atop a structurally sound building, fixated on the explosive inferno before it. He was Trix, the second punishment-level powerhouse of the Disorder Gang. Known as the Abyss Roar, he had accompanied Fey into battle in their mechs, and as star pirates, they were acutely aware of the danger. They dared not underestimate their adversaries' mech capabilities. After all, even a punishment-level physique held little advantage against a steel behemoth weighing several tons. Unlike Fey, who was a battle maniac, Trix was far more cautious. Initially, he intended to use the reckless Fey to probe the enemy's capabilities, but to his astonishment, Fey was eliminated shortly after engaging. Was Fey weak? Trix certainly did not think so. On the contrary, Fey was quite formidable among the punishment-level fighters. Possessing a mental strength of 7 stars and a specialized combat armor, few at the pinnacle of punishment would dare to confront him. Yet, the enemy had bested Fey without even activating an engine overload, although they had utilized their colossal cannon. The fact that they remained unscathed in close combat with Fey spoke volumes. With this thought in mind, Trix's gaze remained fixed on the flames, urging his comrades. Do not cease. Continue the bombardment. Trix's authority among the star pirates was unassailable, and at that moment, no one dared to suggest that wasting ammunition was a folly. After receiving their orders, they promptly set about emptying the missile bays. Once again, a barrage of missiles and energy projectiles descended upon them. Trix's radar frantically scanned the fiery explosions, yet detected nothing. Had they been obliterated? Unlikely. The opposition was not foolish enough to charge into a hail of fire without assurance of success. Halt! Trix commanded, then began to survey his surroundings. At that moment, the sound of shattering glass echoed nearby, revealing a substantial breach in a building as the Blood Det, armed with a spear, surged forward. The thrusters seemed to be operating at full capacity, propelling it at an incredible speed. Trix barely had time to pivot and defend himself. He crossed his steel arms in front, deploying energy shields, just as Mo Lee's spear struck against them, unleashing a torrent of searing plasma. Get back! Trix bellowed, forcefully deflecting Mo Lee away. However, Mo Lee used the momentum to spin, and the spear's tip, now infused with coolant, grazed his chest, igniting a shower of sparks. So resilient? Mo Lee raised an eyebrow, swiftly dodging the targeting locks of several Fortress-class mechs nearby, retreating to the side of a towering building. The colossal mech shattered numerous windows as Mo Lee reignited his engines to charge forward. Lacking ranged capabilities, he opted to create distance. He needed to annihilate Trix. Trix's mind raced as he devised a strategy, yet he had slightly underestimated his foe. In that moment, Mo Lee made a bold choice: overload. The armor of Blood Det trembled as the energy jets surged, and with a twist, Mo Lee hurled it skyward. At that instant, all gazes were fixed upon the spiraling spear. With a resounding clang, in an overloaded state, Mo Lee delivered a kick to the center of the spear, launching it with tremendous force. He followed suit, seizing the spear as it shot forth. The spear transformed into a dual-edged weapon, and Mo Lee executed a series of agile maneuvers in midair, while the targeting systems of the pursuing laser particle weapons struggled to lock onto him. In that fleeting moment, he closed in on Trix. Trix's expression shifted as the armor on his back unfurled, revealing a pair of curved blades. Come. Those who dared to become star pirates were never lacking in ferocity. Trix, without hesitation, opted for engine overload and charged forward with dual blades raised. However, the situation for those behind him became increasingly complicated, just as they instinctively anticipated a classic 1v1 showdown. Trix's voice rang out over the comms. Lock onto me, fire. Instinctively, all the star pirates unleashed a barrage. Witnessing this unfold, Mo Lee felt a flicker of confusion, but after a mere 2 seconds of rapid processing, Xuanji provided clarity. The adversary possessed a method to negate the impacts of these weapons. As he spoke, Mo Lee almost simultaneously descended. A myriad of energy weapons erupted towards Trix, who stepped forward and, in the next instant, appeared suspended in the air at a distance. Those energy projectiles sailed through the space he had just occupied, and Mo Lee, having anticipated the move, narrowly evaded disaster. Temporal distortion technology, Xuanji's voice chimed in, tinged with a hint of amusement. As Mo Lee's heart stirred, he recognized the tyrannical technology present in his opponent's mech, the manipulation of time and space. Although he was uncertain about the distinctions between this temporal technology and that of the Flame Dragon Empire, he understood that its utilization demanded a considerable amount of energy. Before he could ponder further, the Fortress-class assault mechs, having executed a jump through the Trixis, redirected their fire upon him. Mo Lee evaded their onslaught, never remaining within their targeting systems for more than a fleeting second. Trixis observed Mo Lee's swift and precise maneuvers with a twitch of his eye. This mech was astonishingly agile, and its pilot exhibited an extraordinary mastery, simultaneously controlling multiple directional engines. Most alarming was the pilot's confidence. Trixis had yet to witness him deploy a shield. Nevertheless, this was as far as it would go. Given his opponent's speed, Trixis was certain that he could not be pursued while employing his time-space folding technique. As Mo Lee temporarily broke free from the targeting lock and relentlessly charged towards him, Trixis smirked, deeming it a futile effort. His mech was equipped with a time-space membrane folding engine, capable of generating a powerful closed curvature bubble around itself. By harnessing the gravitational field produced by a high-energy artificial singularity ring, it could pinch and fold the space membrane, effectively connecting the starting point and destination to create an illusion of instantaneous movement. This advanced technology, acquired from a supercorporation in the Cloud Dreamstar domain, had nearly cost Trixis his fortune. Yet, it was all worthwhile. Armed with this capability, he stood undefeated among the ranks of the Celestial Punishment class. As Mo Lee approached, Trixis activated the time-space membrane folding engine once more, stepping forward. When he reappeared, he found himself in a different location. However, as he raised his eyes to locate Mo Lee, he discovered that his opponent was already upon him. How could this be? Trixis's pupils dilated in shock as he instinctively swung his blades. Yet Mo Lee deftly parried the strikes with 2 sharp spikes, delivering a powerful kick that sent Trixis stumbling backward. Mo Lee pursued relentlessly, and for the first time, Trixis felt the chill of impending death. In the lower left corner, The time-space membrane folding engine was still in an overloaded state, requiring over 10 seconds to recharge. Yet Imoli was drawing nearer, and his speed of assault was beyond Trixus's expectations. His blades, still in motion from the previous encounter, had not yet returned to a defensive stance when Imoli struck again with 2 swift thrusts. Trixus was now certain that this uncanny agility was indeed a product of his opponent's advanced technology. This realization rendered Trixus's defense increasingly desperate. His mech, originally designed for agile assaults, found little advantage in this close-quarters skirmish, especially with Imoli relentlessly pursuing him, preventing Trixus from signaling his distant mech units to concentrate their fire. "All of you, come forth and shred him to pieces," he commanded in frustration, resorting to close combat orders. The distant mechs activated their engines, charging forward, yet Imoli remained unfazed, opting for an all-out offensive. Trixus found himself in a state of increasing disarray. Never before had he felt such a prolonged duration within those fleeting seconds. The red and blue lights before him continued to explode, causing Imoli to furrow his brow slightly. Subsequently, the tail flames of the miniature plasma directional thruster on his left arm elongated once more. Trix's pupils suddenly constricted, although Imoli had previously overloaded. Why was there a notable surge in power? What answered him were the abruptly intensifying red light spots before him. These crimson points nearly consumed his entire field of vision, and in a fleeting moment, his dual blades were shattered. Meanwhile, other space pirates were still en route from a distance. As a brief gap appeared in the defense of his dual blades, these lights landed upon the surface of the mech. Trix decisively activated his shield. It was at that very instant, the red light points transformed into blue, and Trix sensed impending doom, yet it was already too late. The approaching space pirates could only witness Imoli, spear in hand, striking with a phantom-like frenzy. Their leader, Trix, had activated his shield, but it crumbled in mere 2 seconds. Subsequently, Trix's mech was fully exposed before Imoli. Ding ding ding, boom. In less than a second, Trix's mech exploded violently. Imoli was sent flying, crashing against a building, and he disengaged the engine overload mode, causing the remaining space pirates to halt in unison. As he cleared the debris of the building, Imoli gazed outward, noticing several rows of small text flashing on the screen. Detecting remnants of vacuum quantum fluctuations, captured, decomposing quantum noise into Hilbert space basis. Reconstructing spacetime metric tensor prior to folding. Solving the topological manifold of spacetime wrinkles. Calculation successful. Target locked. Left arm micro auxiliary engine overload at 100. Remaining structural integrity time, 13 seconds. Left arm structural integrity overloaded. Micro thruster 391 damaged. Micro thruster 382. A series of combat logs represented Imoli's recent battle. Blood debt rose from the ruins, with small explosions occurring incessantly on the damaged left arm. Electric arcs leaping wildly. The spear, forged from the Blood Covenant, radiated a faint glow in Imoli's right hand. As Imoli stepped forward, the space pirates instinctively retreated, increasing the distance. The battlefield fell silent for a moment, until someone bellowed, "He is out of energy. Attack. Fey Air and Trix are dead. Whoever kills him shall become the new leader." The mere mention of a leader sent the remaining space pirates into a frenzy, losing all semblance of reason. Yet in the next instant, 2 robust beams obliterated 5 mechs, leaving everyone momentarily stunned. Wasn't he that their city defense weapon? Why was it targeting them? Does he have allies? The remaining individuals were taken aback and scattered in all directions. Within the mech, Imoli observed the dwindling energy of blood debt and the incessantly flickering left arm, a helpless smile gracing his lips, truly troublesome. Should he directly assault their lair next time? Apologies, but he would dare to do so again. Chapter 82. When one grows old, are you not afraid that these space pirates aren't scathed? Xuanji remained quite curious. Imoli shook his head slightly. After all, you are here, aren't you? Even if you falter, there's still Shifangji. How could I falter? Upon hearing this, Xuanji immediately became displeased. That time-space folding point was calculated by me. Let us see if you can find another AI capable of it. You're impressive, you're impressive. Imoli glanced at the now tranquil surroundings. Had the planet been sealed off? Indeed, it had. They could not carry away a single credit. Although Imoli had spared these space pirates, he could not afford to be complacent. What if a cunning rogue attempted to abscond with the assets of the Disorder Gang? Thus, he had instructed Xianji to preemptively secure the major warehouses of the gang. How is the harvest? Imoli inquired as he soared toward the nearest energy supply center. The area was deserted. The news of the demise of 2 formidable enforcers had spread throughout the Disorder Gang, leaving no one daring to linger. Speaking of the hall, Xianji's voice brimmed with excitement. These space pirates are indeed affluent. Several Star Network accounts hold approximately 500 billion star coins. I have already transferred these funds using their permissions. However, this is merely the tip of the iceberg. The true treasure lies in this modified satellite and their energy storage facilities. The Disorder Gang harbors ambitions. They have established a production line for mechas, encompassing manufacturing and maintenance. This line is conservatively estimated to be worth several hundred billion star coins. As for the energy storage, we need not sell it. A minor expenditure to transport it back to the Yensong Star region will suffice. Liquidating these resources could conservatively extend the high-intensity combat duration of the 10 Directions of Silence by at least half an hour. At this news, Mo Li's spirits lifted considerably. His arduous journey to hunt down these space pirates was indeed worthwhile. There is one more matter. What is it? It pertains to this satellite. Suddenly, Mo Li recalled the scene he had witnessed upon entering the city. They had been breeding a large number of humans on this satellite. These were the living captives left behind from their rampant pillaging. Upon reaching the energy center, the occupants had already been neutralized by Xianji's controlled defense weapons. They had never anticipated that their own weapons would turn against them. As Mo Li piloted the mecha into the energy center, Xianji promptly directed robots to replenish energy. I do not have the time to rescue them. Once the resources are transferred, I shall expose this place. While Mo Li was refueling, the group of space pirates who had fled first were now in space. They had established a small spaceport, where ships capable of long-distance warp travel were docked. However, as they approached the spaceport, a multitude of close-range defense weapons activated simultaneously, and alarms blared throughout the mecha cockpit. As they watched the flood of alerts, a chill ran through everyone. There was no time to ponder. Countless points of light illuminated the spaceport, coalescing into a torrent of energy that surged into the mechas. They lacked Mo Li's extraordinary evasive maneuvers and did not possess the capability of the Blood Pact to deflect energy attacks. In a single volley, 80 of these mechas were obliterated mid-air. The remainder consisted primarily of heavy defensive mechas with thicker shields, yet they were generally less agile than their offensive counterparts. And during the second round of fire, their shields could no longer withstand the onslaught. Mo Li gazed toward the sky, faintly perceiving the emergence of small lights. Had they been dealt with? The mechas had nearly been neutralized, yet a few audacious ones had ventured directly into space, seemingly awaiting the return of their ships. Mark the location. Once I replenish my energy, I shall eliminate them. This time, Mo Li intends to leave no star pirate alive. The resources here require time to be monetized, and during this period, should any star pirate disseminate information, it would attract the scrutiny of the other 4 major factions. If the demise of the most formidable member of the disorderly gang is discovered, the avaricious nature of the star pirates would ensure they seize the opportunity without hesitation. The space station is sealed off. Without spacecraft, they could spend a decade flying in mechas and still not escape this place. At the very first moment, Xuanji, who controls the network here, has blocked all spacecraft. Thanks to the star pirates' instinct for self-preservation, all vessels entering this star system must abide by the network they constructed themselves, allowing Xuanji to rightfully claim these ships as her own. Even if a star pirate manages to board a vessel, they would only encounter sealed hatch doors awaiting them. Ensuring that everything is foolproof, Mo Li finally closed his eyes to rest in his mecha. During his repose, in the distant Dongli Star region, Jiang Yin was in a vast factory, continuously tapping on a blue holographic interface that emerged from his arm. Before him, dozens of mechanical arms were tirelessly at work, affixing armor to a colossal humanoid structure. The progress was nearing completion. Jiang Yin wiped the sweat from his brow, contemplating how this young man could conceive such a mecha. Muttering to himself, he descended from the platform he was standing on, stepping out to gaze at the massive construct with a sense of nostalgia. Reflecting on his exchanges with Mo Li during that time, Jiang Yin realized that he had been quite unreserved in his demands. This judgment-class mecha had nearly exhausted all the materials and technologies at his disposal. He couldn't help but wonder how Mo Li was faring in the chaotic star domain, a place rife with peril. Jiang Yin sighed. In his view, it was a bit reckless for Mo Li to venture into the chaotic star domain with a mecha of the blood debt caliber. After all, the star pirates there had developed for many years and certainly possessed some hegemonic technologies. The disparity between the Judgment class and the Fortress class lies fundamentally in hegemonic technology. The overwhelming advantage of such technology is akin to an insurmountable chasm. Yet, Jiang Yin, being a rear echelon personnel, could only rely on theoretical data, unaware of how various extreme maneuvers and the grasp of instantaneous battle conditions could narrow the gap between both sides. The opponents Mo Li would confront, Fei Air and Trix, both operated mechas equipped with hegemonic technologies. For instance, Fei Air's terrifying destructive power could not be easily matched by an ordinary mecha's punch. It evidently employed some form of hegemonic technology. Should Mo Li receive a blow from Fei Air, blood debt would likely be obliterated on the spot. In reality, Fei Air's mecha utilized a gravitational wave modulator, tuning the shockwave of his punch to the inherent frequency of the target exponentially amplifying its destructive capability through resonance. Trix's space-time membrane folding engine was equally apparent. Thus, Jiang Yan's concerns were not unfounded. He had merely underestimated Mo Li's formidable prowess. With this thought weighing heavily on his mind, Jiang Yan muttered to himself, "Just one final push is needed. I might as well work overtime. One doesn't need as much sleep as one ages." While mumbling, he retrieved a nutrient solution from a cabinet on the adjacent wall and downed it in one gulp. Chapter 83. An eye for an eye. Unbeknownst to Mo Li, far across the starry expanse, there are those who strive desperately on his behalf. At this moment, having replenished his mech's energy, he is engaged in the relentless pursuit of space pirates upon a satellite. While the pirates cannot escape the confines of this celestial body, they still pose a potential threat during Mo Li's resource transport, a scenario he wishes to avoid at all costs. In a certain forest, two space pirates navigate their hovering motorcycles at breakneck speeds. Occasionally, branches whip against them, eliciting sharp pangs of pain, yet they dare not halt. For a grim reaper is on the hunt, relentlessly pursuing them. The city has become their forbidden zone, should they venture too close. The defensive weaponry previously deployed would obliterate them in an instant. Damn it, why? The overwhelming sense of impending doom grips their throats, plunging their hearts into despair. Having fled the city, surviving in this artificial forest proves to be a near impossible task. Oblivious to the many eyes watching from the underbrush, the two pirates continue their frantic dash. Suddenly, one of the motorcycles careens out of control, unable to veer away, and crashes into a massive tree, resulting in an explosive energy leak. The two pirates aboard the motorcycle are ensnared by an almost invisible, fine rope. Though clad in combat suits, the rope fails to sever their bodies. However, the kinetic force from the high-speed crash, combined with the unexpectedly resilient rope, subjects their chests to immense impact. In an instant, the chest of the rider in front caves in, while the one behind suffers a lesser blow, yet is still thrown to the ground. As one presses against the grass, contemplating escape, he glances up to find a muddy, bare foot planted in front of him. Then comes another, and another, some large, others small, mostly unshod and soiled. Trembling, the pirate raises his gaze to behold a throng of wild men. They are clad in leaves and vines, armed with bows and stone spears. A stark contrast to the high-tech combat attire of the pirate. Yet these primitive-looking individuals speak fluently in the universal language of the cosmos. Where do you think you're going? The pirate quakes under their gaze, for these people are the very flesh and blood remnants of the Stone Age, cast back into a world they had once dominated. After each raid on a spacecraft, any survivors are captured, stripped of their belongings, and discarded into the forest beyond the city. In this wilderness, devoid of resources, these individuals have fought tooth and nail merely to survive. Their education has primarily revolved around the cosmos, and when thrust back to the Stone Age, they find themselves ill-equipped to endure. Furthermore, they must contend with the predation and slaughter inflicted by the space pirates. Though the environment is lush, with mountains and streams creating an idyllic ecosystem, for these abducted souls, it is akin to hell. In their everyday lives, these pirates ride their hovering motorcycles into the depths of the forest to hunt. These individuals would naturally not remain passive. Apart from a few who could not bear the immediate collapse, the survivors harbored within them a seed of vengeance. They observed a multitude of space pirates entering the forest, not engaging in hunting, but rather seemingly evading something. Thus, they devised a trap. "Vera, my Vera." Suddenly, someone approached with reddened eyes, shouting furiously at the space pirates. "Where have you hidden her?" The space pirates, unaware, instinctively retreated with hands pressed to the ground. I don't know." A sharp stone spear pierced his leg, yet it failed to breach the protective suit. The space pirate froze, and then a realization dawned upon him. The disparity between these primitive individuals and himself was a staggering millions of years of technological advancement. They could not even break through their own defenses. If that were the case, what was there to fear? The group stood in shock, yet they were not true primitives. They understood the reason behind the failure to penetrate the armor, and they were also aware that the suit did not offer full-body protection. As one scarred giant lunged forward, clinging desperately to him, the other space pirates surged forth. At that moment, the exposed features became his fatal weakness. Had he been a typical primitive, he might have surrendered upon realizing the spear's ineffectiveness. The space pirate's eyes were brutally gouged out, his ears bitten off, his hair torn, and his mouth pierced by a stone spear. He attempted to struggle, but the protective suit offered no propulsion, and with so many pressing down upon him, even the slightest movement was a luxury. He could only watch in horror as his facial skin was mercilessly torn away, and after a gash split his scalp. Someone seized it with bloodied hands and ripped it off. He felt the scalp and hair being stripped away, fingers incessantly probing into his ears, attempting to excavate his brain. Their madness rendered his screams even more harrowing. Mo Li hovered above the forest, silently observing this scene. The power of hatred was indeed terrifying, Xianji reflected. Although he too possessed human emotions, the capacity for such extreme feelings to unleash greater potential was something he could not emulate. Deep within, Xianji understood that this might be the true distinction between himself and humanity. I have a brilliant idea, Emoli suddenly spoke. What? The space pirates of the Disorderly Alliance relished the thrill of the hunt, right? Xianji sensed Emoli's intent. Then let us allow them to experience what it feels like to be hunted. Are you going to arm these individuals? Emoli nodded slightly. The city's defense system was under Xianji's control. These individuals could not breach it without mechs, and there was ample time for Emoli to transport all the resources. Thus, in the following days, the inhabitants of this satellite suddenly discovered that ships hovered above them, accurately deploying various weapons. These individuals, already fueled by hatred, hesitated not for a moment upon wielding the arms, undaunted by the potential for traps. Armed, they fortuitously noticed an increase in space pirates within the forest. Consequently, a hunt commenced upon this planet. Half a month later, a spaceship departed from this star region, simultaneously carrying with it a piece of news. The lair of the Disorder Gang, one of the 5 major factions in the Chaotic Star region, had been breached, and the route to their stronghold was made public. Initially, no one believed the news, but as the Tekla Hub's officials unexpectedly dispatched a rescue team into the Disorder Gang's lair and successfully extricated a group of captives, the entire Chaotic Star region erupted into a frenzy. The Chaotic Star region has never lacked opportunists, and soon the first wave of individuals ventured into the Disorder Gang's stronghold, quickly confirming the news. The pirates of the Chaotic Star region became delirious with excitement. Even a withered camel outweighs a horse. Yet they remained oblivious to the fact that the resources of the Disorder Gang had already been completely depleted by Emoli. Consequently, one by one, they began piloting their ships towards the Disorder Gang's lair. Where there are pirates, disputes inevitably arise. In the past, skirmishes erupted along the way, often involving remnants of the 4 major factions. The tumultuous battles, compounded by the competition for resources, plunged the entire Chaotic Star region into chaos. The pirates, already disorganized, found their fragile alliances teetering on the brink of collapse. Although the major factions appeared harmonious, this was only in the absence of conflict over interests. Now, however, a minor dispute had surfaced. The first faction to reach the Disorder Gang's lair was the King of Junk Ships, specializing in derelict vessels. The King of Junk Ships boasted a significantly faster travel speed than other pirates, and other factions always suspected that the king possessed undisclosed technological advantages. Thus, upon arriving at the Disorder Gang's lair and discovering the resources had been entirely plundered, all accusatory gazes fell upon the King of Junk Ships. A conflict erupted seemingly out of nowhere. Initially, the King of Junk Ships attempted to refute the allegations, only to find a battered mech on their ship. They recognized it as belonging to a fortress-level pilot of the Disorder Gang. Now, the King of Junk Ships could not wash their hands of this matter, no matter how hard they tried. Some astute individuals might conjecture that this was a conspiracy, but what did it matter? In light of this so-called conspiracy, they were more focused on the immediate gains, namely the King of Junk Ships. The king had absconded with all the resources of the Disorder Gang, thus shattering the alliance contracts among the 5 major factions. Surely that could not be overlooked. At this juncture, the other 3 factions had actually regained some composure. They refrained from directly attacking the King of Junk Ships, as they too suspected the presence of a third party behind the scenes. Therefore, they proposed exorbitant profit-sharing demands. Naturally, the King of Junk Ships was unwilling, as they had not acquired any resources from the Disorder Gang. How could they accept such an unjust loss? However, the other factions were resolute in their intent to extract a piece of flesh from them, leading to their palpable frustration. Having gained nothing, they were instead left in a precarious predicament, seething with anger with no outlet for their rage. Faced with such a dire situation, they truly found themselves at a loss. Unless they could uncover the identity of the individual who had wrought havoc upon the Disorder Gang. However, whether from the mouths of those star pirates or the rescued flesh slaves, the information they received was singular. Only one individual had arrived. This left the crew of the wrecked ship King in a state of confusion. How could this be possible? If the opponent was indeed a solitary figure, they were certainly not someone they could afford to provoke. After several days of negotiations, the other factions employed various threats and temptations, ultimately forcing the wrecked ship King to yield. Following the compensation, the crew felt as though they had ingested something foul, their tempers becoming increasingly volatile. During these days, the Tekra Hub witnessed a surge in conflicts, with nearly 2/3 of the participants hailing from the wrecked ship King. When the instigator, Emoli, emerged from the repair shop, he was still somewhat dazed. His mech, blood dead, had suffered a second overload, causing nearly all of its miniature auxiliary engines to malfunction. Emoli undertook the repairs himself, expending considerable effort, and upon exiting the shop, He had never before felt the outside air to be so invigorating. Why had they turned against each other? While still pondering this, a shocking message from Xuanji reached him. The remaining 3 major factions, Rust Brotherhood, Shattered Star Raiders, and Madfire Bandits, had united to launch an assault on the wrecked Ship King. 3 against 1 was hardly surprising. The wrecked Ship King was swiftly eradicated, with all 3 elite pilots perishing. Subsequently, these 3 factions formed an alliance under a name that, while unfamiliar to outsiders, was deeply recognized by those who had long resided in the Tekra hub, Crimson Star Scar. At this moment, those aware of the history of Crimson Star Scar suddenly realized that the individual had returned. It was no wonder that the 3 factions joined forces. After all, the Rust Brotherhood and the Madfire Bandits had originally splintered from Crimson Star Scar. When the Shattered Star Raiders and the other factions re-emerged, they discovered that none of the high-ranking members of the Shattered Star Raiders had appeared. No one knew what had transpired, and Mo Li was left dumbfounded. He had initially planned to dismantle them one by one, but now, witnessing the unification of the 3 factions, he understood that the level of threat was not merely additive. It felt as if countless star coins were slipping away from him. Why? Mo Li had meticulously devised a plan, intending first to eliminate the weakest faction, the Chaos Gang, then frame the wrecked Ship King to incite internal strife, and finally strike at the wrecked Ship King for a decisive victory. Yet, just as his mech was repaired, the world outside had changed dramatically. Moreover, for reasons unknown, he felt an unsettling sense of being outmaneuvered. The 6th sense of a strong individual is never mistaken, yet recently, he found it difficult to act. With no alternatives, Mo Li decided to return to Cole's vicinity to gather some intelligence, as Cole seemed to fit the profile of an information broker. As for Cole, he had been exceedingly busy these days. Mo Li's batch of mechs had stirred considerable unrest in the market, and initially, Cole had anticipated that it would take some time to sell them. As chaos ensued with the unexpected downfall of the disorderly faction, the remaining major powers erupted into conflict. Consequently, the consumption of mechs surged. The assault-class mechs sold the fastest. Yet they were also the most prone to destruction, followed closely by the Fortress-class mechs. After a significant portion of the Fortress-class mechs was sold, the 3 remaining powers announced the formation of the Deep Crimson Scar. Upon hearing this name, Cole felt a moment of disorientation, followed by a smile. The success of the Deep Crimson Scar implied that his remaining mechs would not lack a market. After all, that individual's ambition was not trivial. No, it was not merely ambition, it was a thirst for vengeance. What an expressive face. While Cole's thoughts wandered, Mo Li's sudden call nearly startled him to death. You walk without a sound. Cole looked at Mo Li, still shaken, and asked, what brings you here? Not working? How are the mechs selling? Not working? Cole gazed at him in confusion, hoping to discern something. But Mo Li merely wore an innocent expression, his eyes as clear as a fresh-faced university student. After a prolonged examination yielded nothing, he decided to abandon his curiosity. The mechs have been selling quite well recently. 2 of the judgment class have already been reserved. Once I consolidate all the resources, we can proceed with production. Hearing about the booming sales, Mo Li's eyes sparkled with excitement. Does that mean they'll be sold out soon? Yes, but at this point, Cole found it peculiar. If you want to buy them, why not just say so directly? Why this roundabout approach? However, as Cole always had his own way of doing things, he chose not to speculate further. What is the situation lately? Mo Li casually inquired, only to be met with Cole's astonished expression. You don't know? Am I supposed to? Mo Li replied, bewildered. He had been preoccupied with settling his blood debts and was completely oblivious to the happenings outside. Cole scrutinized Mo Li's expression. It appeared genuine, which only deepened his own confusion. You don't know that Victor is the creator of the Deep Crimson Scar? What? Mo Li exclaimed, his eyes widening in shock. How could this be? Mo Li was genuinely astounded. He sensed that Seabass was no ordinary individual, yet he never considered that he might be the leader of a faction. After all, during their first encounter, Seabass's identity suggested he was unlikely to hold such a position. From the perspective of a butler, Seabass was impeccable in every aspect. How could a leader reach such heights? As a butler, Seabass's meticulous attention to detail and his seemingly unconscious actions, like maintaining a precise half-step distance while speaking to Mo Li, allowed him to efficiently pass items, comprehend commands, and anticipate Mo Li's needs. Moreover, Seabass hardly made a sound, his breathing so light that it seemed non-existent. Yet, Mo Li could distinctly sense that half-step behind him stood an unwavering presence, always prepared to execute any command. Such an intuition was far beyond what other butlers could achieve. This vocation seemed to be woven into the very essence of Seabass. And now, he had transformed into the leader of a space pirate faction? The overwhelming sense of disconnection left Mo Li feeling somewhat unreal. Cole, oblivious to this, continued speaking. recounting how the Crimson Star Scar once stood as a formidable power within the Chaos Star region, even hinting at a trend towards unification. Wait, Emoli pressed his forehead. Are you about to tell a story? Cole's emotions had become so disjointed by this interruption that he instinctively replied, yes. Aren't you curious? Emoli shook his head slightly, then entered the adjacent room, opened Cole's refrigerator, and retrieved 2 bottles of wine before sitting down. You may continue. Observing this, Cole felt a twinge of discomfort. No, you must not interrupt me when I am about to share a profound tale. My emotions are all over the place. However, Emoli was his esteemed patron, and since this information was not particularly confidential, Victor still trusted him. Cole shared everything without reservation. At that time, Victor was the leader of the Crimson Star Scar, and unlike other leaders who relied on brute force, he united his followers through sheer charisma. The previous Rust Brotherhood and the Madfire Bandits had splintered from the upper echelons of the Crimson Star Scar. After Cole finished speaking, his gaze settled on Emoli. The two maintained eye contact for a moment, after which Cole, in a fit of frustration, exclaimed, "Why don't you ask me how the Crimson Star Scar fractured?" Upon hearing this, Emoli, who had been savoring his drink, instantly adopted a serious demeanor, sitting up straight. How did the Crimson Star Scar fracture? Cole took a deep breath, explaining that the Crimson Star Scar was composed of 5 punishment-level pilots, among whom was Ariel, Victor's wife, who had reached the pinnacle of punishment. At that time in the Chaos Star region, no one could rival her. And she and Victor were poised to sweep through the Chaos Star region. Despite her high status, Ariel was deeply obedient to Victor, and they regarded each other as more precious than their own lives. Emoli nodded thoughtfully. Seemingly influenced by his mood, Cole's voice grew deeper. Yet, just as they were on the brink of unification, betrayal struck. Christopher, one of his 5 punishment-level elites. At this point, Cole's expression darkened. Back then, only 2 factions remained to resist in the Chaos Star region, and they had united, but with only 3 punishment-level fighters, they could not possibly defeat Victor. However, Christopher's betrayal, along with the emergence of 2 peak-level punishment fighters among the space pirates, shattered Victor's dream of unification. Emoli frowned slightly, noting that Seabass did not seem like the type to crave power. Not for the sake of power, Cole shook his head, his expression somber. The origin of the Crimson Star Scar was that they were captured meat slaves by the space pirates. Victor's journey from rebellion to ascending to the leader's position, and ultimately preparing to unify the Star region, was all aimed at restoring these individuals to their rightful status as citizens of the Federation. Emoli recalled Seabass's terrifying physical prowess, which allowed him to overturn the pirates' rule as a meat slave, and began to understand why the restoration of identity was so vital. But restoration of identity? Yes. Ordinary citizens who go missing in the Chaos Star region are invariably labeled as pirates. Emoli rested his chin thoughtfully, realizing that the Federation appeared to be far more corrupt than he had anticipated. It had seemingly devolved into a mere tool for the legislators to amass wealth. Betrayal was one factor, and the animosity from the legislators was another. Speaking of legislators, a glint of coldness flickered in Cole's eyes as he recalled the betrayal by Christopher, which had severely fractured the Crimson Star Scar. The identity of the perpetrator remained shrouded in mystery. Later, when Victor, who had vanished from the battlefield for years, resurfaced, he implicated Councilman Chun as the mastermind before disappearing once more. His second appearance had been recent. Cole felt a sense of helplessness when the subject of Seabass arose. Emoli, in deep contemplation, realized that Seabass had been quite active in recent years. However, his role as a steward allowed him access to a wealth of information. After all, their clientele comprised the upper echelons of the Federation. In this interstellar era, the colossal vessels of major shipping companies remained the most favorable means of travel. Upon hearing Seabass's tale, Emoli felt a wave of discomfort wash over him. With Seabass now consolidating the chaotic star regions, how could he possibly take action? While he bore no qualms about confronting space pirates, the thought of turning against Seabass was troubling. Nevertheless, selling this batch of mechas would likely keep the Shifeng Jidong occupied for quite some time, and Emoli had devised a plan of his own. Xuanji, what do you think are the chances that if I were to provoke Tucker in the North Falling Star region, he would send over other mechas? According to the analysis of Councilman Tucker's personality, the probability was 99.3. Emoli furrowed his brow upon hearing this. Where has that Xuanji gone off to play now? Whenever Xuanji adopted such an emotionless tone, it indicated the activation of its subroutine. The sudden loss of income left Emoli in a rather dispirited state. Cole noticed his friend's despondency and found himself utterly perplexed by Emoli's thought process. Logically, one would expect him to rejoice at Victor's successful unification of the chaotic star regions, given their friendship. However, it was ultimately their affair, and Cole felt it inappropriate to pry further. By the way, once Seabass unifies the chaotic star regions, will he be able to restore his citizenship? Emoli suddenly pondered. Such a scenario seemed rather implausible. While some space pirates might have been coerced, they remained pirates nonetheless. And it was unlikely that the Federation would expend such effort to restore their citizenship. Based on M.O. Lee's understanding of the Federation, the more probable outcome would be to eradicate them as genuine pirates. I am uncertain, but Seabass, no, Victor, must possess his own channels. Otherwise, he would not have chosen to unify back then. Oh, M.O. Lee responded, nodding in vague understanding. But what about the one who secretly set traps for him? At this mention, Cole clenched his fists, striking the table with a resounding thud. Councilman Chun, the suddenness of this upheaval is alarming. The adversary is located on the other side of the North Falling Star region, making a swift response impossible. The Shattered Star Plunderers are his minions. They never anticipated Victor's resurgence, and now they have been jointly eradicated by Victor and the Rust Brotherhood. The news has likely just reached him. Cole's deductions were utterly accurate. At the opposite end of the Northern Star Domain, which also serves as the connection to the Qingming Star Domain, the economy flourishes significantly more than in the vicinity of the Chaotic Star Domain. This area is under the dominion of Counselor Qinyao, on a naturally thriving life planet. Atop a towering structure, a leisure zone has been established, complete with verdant lawns, an infinity pool, and dining bars, all offering a splendid view of the planet's most breathtaking landscapes. As the sun began its descent, a man in his 40s leisurely savored a glass of wine by the pool's edge, while a beautiful woman in swimwear laughed charmingly across from him, seemingly engrossed in conversation. Suddenly, the man paused, his miniature StarNet device emitting a voice. Your Excellency, there has been an incident in the Chaotic Star Domain. What? The man who wielded authority over this star domain was none other than Counselor Qinyao. The Chaotic Star Domain was merely one of his many ventures, yet its significance ranked within the top 5. It pertained to a research endeavor of his. This domain provided a continuous supply of living specimens, which were crucial to his experiments. What is the situation? Chen Yao sat up slightly, resting a hand on his knee, a pensive expression gracing his features. Victor has returned. Victor? Chen Yao inquired, perplexed. Who is that? The one who once fancied unifying the Chaotic Star Domain and negotiated to revert to civilian status with the Counselor. He is back? Chen Yao was astonished. Yet he could hardly fathom how Victor could achieve unification. There have been unforeseen changes. The disorderly gang has been eradicated. Seizing the chaos, he eliminated our people and then unified the domain. Chen Yao rose, and a woman in a swimsuit gently draped a bathrobe over his shoulders. The experiment has reached a critical phase. The supply of living specimens must not be interrupted. Dispatch someone immediately. In the following days, Emoli planned to depart from the Chaotic Star Domain. During this time, significant transformations unfolded within the domain. After Seabass unified the area, he began to impose restrictions on the Star Pirates. A leopard cannot change its spots, and for a newly unified regime, imposing various constraints would undoubtedly provoke considerable backlash. However, Seabass opted for direct and violent suppression. Emoli had a vague understanding of his intentions. If he sought to attract the Federation's allegiance, those who remained restless would forfeit their eligibility the moment they revealed themselves. Yet, Emoli found himself perplexed. Was there truly a necessity for belonging to the Federation? Was it not better to reign over one's territory? Though he could not comprehend it, Seabass's actions continued unabated. The Tekla Nexus had noticeably heightened its vigilance during this period. Many cities were now witnessing an increase in patrolling defense teams. Emoli observed, sensing a disquieting atmosphere. However, this was the path Seabass had chosen, and he had little to say on the matter. After 2 days, as he prepared to leave, he received a message from Jiang Yan. The customized Judgment Class mech is en route. Unaware of the current circumstances, Jiang Yan had directly dispatched the mech to this location, compelling Emoli to postpone his departure for a few more days. Yet, during this interval, the situation in the Chaotic Star Domain took a dramatic turn. Within the confines of the former stronghold of the Rust Brotherhood, the Rust Star Domain, a Star Torch-class fleet emerged from warp mode, appearing at the edge of the Star Domain, as the colossal warship, stretching 10,000 meters in length, made its grand entrance. A multitude of cruisers and assault boats simultaneously emerged from hyperspace. The Star Domain detection system responded swiftly. Standing on the balcony of a room, Seabass gazed up at the starry sky. You have indeed arrived. His eyes were filled with a chilling hatred. He knew all too well the origins of this fleet. After annihilating the Shattered Star Plunderers, he had discerned that the opposing faction had long been in collusion with Chen Yao. During this period, the influx of people towards his side had exceeded 100,000. Moreover, in the past couple of months, the numbers had surged conspicuously. Now, their sudden cessation was far from his usual demeanor. He carefully retrieved a photograph from his chest, depicting a striking blonde woman, tenderly embracing his robust arm. In the image, Seabass appeared somewhat bewildered. I will avenge you. A commotion ensued. Cole found Emoli, urgency etched across his features. Victor just urgently requisitioned those 2 punishment-class mechs. And the final payment has been settled. He mentioned that Chun Yao has arrived. Emily felt a stir within. Where? The Rust Star Domain. Chun Yao has mobilized the Star Torch fleet. This is likely to be a formidable challenge. Once a fleet is deployed, the number of mechs it carries begins at a minimum of 1,000, and the planetary defense systems in the chaotic star domain are utterly negligible. Once a battle commences, it will be a matter of true steel clashing against steel. He possesses vast influence, capable of deploying fleets across regions at will. The Katra hub is the territory of another senator. Dispatching the Star Torch fleet under the pretense of eradicating space pirates is surely destined to be interpreted as an act of war by the local senator. No, this fleet must not be officially recorded. He must have arrived through some alternative channels. Victor is now in grave danger. The Star Torch fleet is beyond what the combined forces of several factions can contend with. Indeed, it is perilous, Emily suddenly stated with a grave countenance. We cannot continue to observe passively. Seabass is my dearest friend. We must assist him. Do you not agree? Absolutely. However, with our current capabilities, we would be of little help in such a high-level conflict. Cole, more anxious than Emily, insisted, we must devise a plan. I have a solution, but I must set off immediately. The battle has already commenced. If we delay, we may not even be able to retrieve his remains. Mr. M.O., Cole remarked. His expression complex as he regarded Emily. I did not expect the depth of your bond with Victor. Truly, his charisma is disarming, no matter where one may be. At that moment, Emily had already stepped outside, and, noticing Cole still rooted in place, urged him, come on, we must go. Ah, wait, there is an important question. Cole called out, catching up to Emily. What question? Regarding the unregistered warships. Can you engage them? Chapter 87. Dreaming of the Magnificent in the Rust Star Domain. A grand battle had commenced. Chun Yao's Star Torch fleet possessed an independent and complete supply and maintenance line, which, due to technological advancements, might even surpass the adequacy of the Rust Star Domain itself. Furthermore, this fleet had dispatched 5 punishment-class mechs, while Seabass, having united the Rust Brotherhood and the Frantic Fire Bandits, could muster only 4 punishment-class mechs. In these days, there exists a distinction among the celestial punishments. Chun Yao's celestial punishment level resembles that of a regular army, equipped with advanced technology and superior mech capabilities, not to mention the overwhelming technological prowess at their disposal. Thus, from the outset, Seabass had no intention of confronting them head-on. Instead, he relied on several planets within the Rusty Star Domain to engage in guerrilla tactics. While the Star Pirates lacked proficiency in direct combat, their abilities in stealth and evasion were unparalleled, forged through a relentless struggle for survival. Those who had not honed these skills had long since ended up in the federal prisons or transformed into space debris. Exploiting this advantage, Seabass managed to maintain a fragile balance, though the situation remained dire. Each deployment of Chun Yao's 5 celestial punishment subordinates inflicted significant damage upon the pirates, and the fleet was drawing perilously close to their home star. Once the supply and repair lines were severed, they would be unable to withstand a war of attrition. Seabass's mech connection was dreadful, and he refrained from piloting a mech into battle, instead orchestrating the overall strategy from the home star. Victor, we are in dire straits. A plea for help resonated through the encrypted channel formed by the 4 celestial punishment elites. Initially, Victor had instructed them to avoid the front lines while coordinating their movements to seek an opportunity to ambush Chun Yao's mothership. However, the defenses of the Star Torch-class fleet were formidable, even with 4 celestial punishment mechs acting in concert. They failed to find a viable opportunity to breach the mothership's defenses. Instead, they found themselves relentlessly pursued by the enemy's celestial punishment forces, their respective combat capabilities not even in the same league, compelling them to evade direct confrontation. Hold on a bit longer. Seabass gazed at the overall star map, beads of sweat forming on his brow. The deep crimson star scar had already sustained considerable losses, and he dared not send reinforcements to the front line, where the Star Torch fleet's various weapons were no trifling matter. Moreover, they lacked any large vessels capable of confronting the mothership, as the Star Pirates primarily operated nimble small assault ships. With no established routes, the planet where Seabass was located had also activated a shielding field, preventing Chun Yao's fleet from executing a warp jump, forcing them to rely solely on their pulse engines for travel. Even so, it would not take long for them to arrive. As the fleet approached the home star, the Star Torch-class fleet was now equipped with large-scale weapons such as condensed gamma-ray laser cannons and gravitational focus cannons, capable of obliterating space stations with a single shot. Once they neared the home star, they would unleash devastating strikes upon the spaceport beyond the star, and at that juncture, the deep crimson star scar would truly face annihilation. Without ships, relying solely on mechs, they would be unable to escape this galaxy. As the fleet became increasingly unstoppable, the inhabitants of the deep Crimson Star Scar grew anxious, with Seabass feeling the weight of immense pressure. Just a little longer, Seabass murmured. We have reinforcements, and with our citizenship status, Chen Yao will not dare to act. For many years, Seabass had awaited this moment. Having once emerged from the depths of servitude, he no longer wished to forfeit his human rights. The thought of becoming a star pirate, the very thing he despised most, was too much for Seabass to contemplate. And instead, his gaze hardened with resolve. At that moment, the Star Network communicator chimed, and upon seeing the name displayed, Seabass's pupils contracted, and he hastily chose to answer. Hello? Counselor Mingyang. It's me. Seabass's voice trembled slightly. If he were alone, perhaps he would have displayed little emotion. However, at this moment, the weight upon him was not solely his own, but also encompassed countless friends and brothers, all of whom shared his origins as mere flesh and had once lost their humanity. He bore the burden of too many identities, all ensnared and trapped. The voice on the other side was cold, seemingly impatient. Seabass's pupils suddenly constricted, his tone turning frigid. You deceived me? No, several senators have stalled my approval. Came the reply. Tucker and Chun Yao are leading this. Why? Seabass was taken aback. They have always been allies, but now Chun Yao is targeting you. A weight settled heavily in his heart. It was commonplace for citizenship approvals to be stalled. This path was futile, and all he could do was await reinforcements. But what of the fleet? On the way. Impossible. Chun Yao's fleet has already arrived. I warned you in advance. Are you questioning me? The voice on the other end turned icy. This concerns the lives of everyone. Seabass stood his ground. This is the condition we agreed upon. The unification of the chaotic star region, which could become the sharpest weapon in your hands. Moreover, who would suspect this is your blade? Although I do not comprehend why. As one of the most prominent senators in the Federation, a renowned philanthropist, and a dreamer for the citizens, you conceal so many daggers in private. I understand that where there is existence, there are vulnerabilities. The day of discovery will be your downfall. But we are different. We are the rats of the sewers, the cockroaches in the gutter, the maggots feasting on decaying flesh. Even if someone discovers us, the ignorant masses will never associate us with you. Thus, I am the most effective knife in your arsenal. Silence enveloped the conversation. After a moment, the voice responded. You are quite astute, but perhaps too astute. In that instant, Seabass understood. The price for the fleet to act was his life. The other side fell silent, ending the communication. A flicker of relief crossed Seabass's usually stern visage. In the chaotic star region, though there were few formidable punishment-class ships, controlling this area was akin to commanding an arena for breeding poison. In this lawless territory, space pirates had always come seeking fortune. With a little maneuvering, one could cultivate a plethora of poisonous creatures to become weapons in her hands. What Mingyang sought was not the immediate military strength of this place, but its name, a name that could unify. As for himself, she had likely found a suitable candidate, prepared to step in the moment he fell. But who could it be? Accessing the private channel of the punishment class, Seabass inhaled deeply. I wish to know, who is it? Boss Victor, I apologize. Xiaoyin, is that you? Seabass felt a sudden sense of relief. Apologies. What is happening? Why does Xiaoyin say sorry? Enough. Come help. They are coming again in groups. Seabass chuckled, shaking his head slightly. No need. You all return. Boss Victor, we can still hold on. You gave me my life. What does it matter if I return now? Listening to the anxious voices emanating from the channel, Victor found, for reasons unknown, that his footsteps felt considerably lighter. In the early chapters of his life, he had lived solely for himself until he encountered Ariel, after which he began to live for others. Following her untimely demise, he devoted himself to realizing her dreams. Now, it appeared that the price for fulfilling those aspirations was his very own life. Yet what of it? Seabass suddenly experienced a profound sense of relief. Demang, Lao Qi, Xiaoyin, and Lao Cheng, return to me, he urged softly. You are the key to Dreaming Yang's control over the chaotic star domain. In the initial stages, she will not harm you. His words caused the expressions of the others to shift subtly. Boss Victor, I'm so sorry. There's no need for apologies. You were merely living for yourself. At that moment, the other three understood that their once brother-in-arms had betrayed them. Why? Our lives were saved by Boss Victor. What wrong has he done to us? You have deeply disappointed me. The others, incredulous, faced Xiaoyin, who offered no response. Boss, if we return, those 5 punishment-level warriors. Dreaming Yang will not allow the vital forces of the chaotic star domain to be extinguished so swiftly, and besides, Xiaoyin is still one of hers. Seabass's choices will inevitably align with Dreaming Yang. In truth, the 3 had no choice but to return, for Xiaoyin had already departed. Should they remain, they would find themselves outnumbered and swiftly overwhelmed. As the 4 made their exit, Chun Yao's fleet advanced unimpeded. The others could not intercept them. And just as Chun Yao's fleet believed they could surge forward and seize victory, an unidentified fleet suddenly emerged. This fleet displayed formidable combat prowess, boasting 5 punishment-level mechs. As the two fleets engaged, Seabass watched the scene unfold, his heart easing. As long as Dreaming Yang still valued this star domain, there remained hope. However, to say he was content would be false. Yet, Seabass had no alternatives. Over the years, he had come to understand the immense power wielded by a council member. At times, he even felt that Dreaming Yang's interest in the chaotic star domain was a stroke of fortune for the place itself. In the command room, the others were oblivious to the unfolding events, their confusion palpable upon the appearance of the fleet. An unidentified fleet has been detected. They are engaging in battle. Is this Boss Victor's reinforcements? Hearing their voices, Seabass felt a pang of anguish. These individuals were present solely out of trust in him, and now he had reached a critical juncture. In truth, he had anticipated this day. From the moment he sought out Dreaming Yang, he had gambled on the notion that this masked council member possessed the resolve to retain him. Yet, it was now clear that he had lost that wager. She was not as he had envisioned, for she did not favor that which lay beyond her control. When Xiaoyin returns, perhaps it will signify my own demise. Yet there is no need for concern, reinforcements are on the way. Seabass rubbed his brow, realizing that once they arrived, Chen Yao's fleet would no longer be able to advance. As he settled back into his seat, a profound sense of helplessness enveloped him. Despite being the leader of the Crimson Star Scar, he felt insignificant before the colossal presence of the counselor. The adversary could effortlessly dispatch a fleet of Star Torch-class ships, and one could only speculate how many such fleets they secretly maintained. Upon discovering that their enemy was a counselor, despair had initially consumed him. Yet, driven by hatred, he managed to survive and learned that the only way to confront a counselor was to seek out another counselor. These parasites, clinging to the Federation, had grotesquely ballooned into monstrous entities over the years. His investigations into the counselors had revealed nothing but despair. Although his physical strength was formidable, his empathy level was merely 42, which limited him to piloting only the most basic assault mechs. However, at the crucial moment, Seabass rose. The external situation had stabilized. I shall go retrieve them, he declared. Others regarded him with a hint of confusion. They were aware of Victor's low empathy level and questioned what he could possibly achieve. Nevertheless, despite the stable battlefront, vigilance was paramount, and they had no time to ponder further. Seabass exited the command room and made his way to a long-forgotten warehouse. Inside, there stood a mech. Old friend, he murmured, the dim warehouse lights casting an air of antiquity upon the assault-class mech. As he caressed the mech's armor, a wave of emotions surged within him, unwillingness, despair, and a yearning for life. Outside, the 4 punishment-class mechs of the Crimson Star Scar had returned to the planet's orbit. Dumao, Lao Qi, and Lao Cheng formed a triangular formation, encircling Xiaoyin. Why betray the boss? Lao Cheng, the eldest among them and a longtime ally of Seabass, questioned. The counselor demands your death. Xiaoyin's expression was inscrutable. Since death was inevitable, could he not lend them assistance before his end? As long as Counselor Mingyang secures the chaotic star domain, we will be her prime choice to control it. Are you emulating Christopher? Dumao thundered. I'll deal with you first. Dumao. Lao Qi suddenly interjected. The boss is coming. The 4 turned to see a white mech ascending from below. Seabass tapped into their squad channel. Silence. If I remain alive, the fleet of Counselor Mingyang will not mobilize, and we shall all perish. His tone was light, as if discussing a trivial matter. Xiaoyin, he directed his gaze towards the mech belonging to Xiaoyin. You are the executor, are you not? Indeed. Very well. Seabass sighed softly. I only hope that after I am gone, you will take good care of everyone. Dumao and the others paled in response, sensing the impending arrival. Stop. Seabass commanded sharply. My death is the condition for Counselor Mingyang to act. Consider your wives and children. The 3 trembled. For having led the Rust Brotherhood and the Madfire Bandits over the years, they had long established their own families. This time, their reckless charge to the front lines was partly driven by the desire for the tranquility of their homes. Xiaoyin decisively approached Seabass, saying, Boss, I'm sorry. I had no choice. Seabass reached out, and Xiaoyin instinctively lowered his head, reminiscent of the moment Seabass had rescued him from a crowd of flesh slaves, gently reassuring him. Yet both were clad in mechs, and within the machines, energy readings surged alarmingly. Seabass's palm opened to reveal a dark cannon bore, and a particle beam instantly pierced through the unguarded mech of Xiaoyin. Seabass retracted his hand, observing Xiaoyin, who could not utter a final word, his expression cold. How could I entrust a traitor to lead them? The sudden turn of events left Lao Cheng and others in shock. Boss, you. Seabass waved his hand, silencing them. Lao Cheng, you take care of the deep red star scar. Lao Qi, Demang, you are to assist him. Without waiting for their response, Seabass directed his voice to Xiao Yin's mech, Deputy Mingyang. Do not be anxious, I will perish. However, The chaotic star domain cannot fall under his control. Lao Cheng has a stable temperament. He is not easily distracted. Victor, you are commendable. A voice filled with suppressed rage echoed through the channel. Meng Yang aimed to dominate the chaotic star domain and could only choose from among them. However, the remaining three were unwaveringly loyal to Seabass and could not be swayed. With Xiaoyin's demise, the only suitable candidates left were the three of them. Furthermore, Meng Yang had investigated their personalities. They were indeed less ambitious and clever than Seabass, yet still fell short as competent pawns. Unfortunately, she had no choice now. Previously, she denied Seabass a chance to choose. And now, at the brink of his life, he returned the favor. Without allowing Meng Yang a moment to contemplate, Seabass activated the engine and soared into the distant starry sky, where explosions of light marked the battlefield between two colossal warships. Boss, Demeng roared, I will follow you. Stop. Seabass replied without looking back, you two hold him. Lao Cheng and Lao Chi each grabbed Demeng firmly. The view before Lao Cheng blurred as he watched Seabass's receding figure in silence. Meng Yang also fell silent, seemingly accepting Lao Cheng's leadership over the chaotic star domain. What a pity, you are truly too clever. To manage the information of numerous council members single-handedly over the years, Seabass's abilities and intellect were undoubtedly formidable, yet Meng Yang found him too unpredictable for her liking. She despised such individuals, feeling perpetually unable to see through them. Even at the brink of death, Seabass still managed to stir chaos, a sensation that repulsed her. Gazing at the distant cosmos, Seabass gradually pushed the engine to its maximum power. A battle-class mech, having entered a battlefield of such caliber, faces a daunting mortality rate exceeding 99. As Seabass approaches the conflict, he increasingly perceives his own insignificance. The two formidable fleets have deployed their mech forces. The onslaught from Dream Yang's fleet poses a terrifying threat to the warships, while Chun Yao's fleet is left with no choice but to defend. Although the apparent strength of both sides seems comparable, the command and overall prowess of Dream Yang's fleet far surpass that of Chun Yao's. Consequently, Chun Yao's fleet is retreating steadily, and Seabass silently joins the fray. The addition of a battle-class mech, amidst the chaos of electronic signals and severely compromised detection systems, fails to stir any significant commotion. Compared to Dream Yang, Seabass harbors a deeper animosity towards Chun Yao, thus setting his sights on the latter's fleet. At this moment, Chun Yao's fleet finds itself besieged by a multitude of mechs, rendering long-range weaponry nearly useless, necessitating the return of mech units for defense. However, the battlefield within the fleet incurs substantial damage, as errant missiles and particle beams wreak havoc on the assault ships. After years of absence from combat, Seabass feels no sense of unfamiliarity. As he maneuvers closer to target a mech from Chun Yao's fleet, he is resolute. On the opposite side of the battlefield, a ship lies in silent mode, cloaked in optical camouflage, observing the unfolding events like a phantom. Wait, why are there two fleets? Mo Lee and Cole arrive just in time to witness the clash. This is troublesome, they simultaneously exclaim. Cole's expression betrays concern. These fleets appear anything but victors, raising the grim possibility that he may have already fallen. Try contacting him, he urges. No response. Cole shakes his head, having been calling out to Victor since entering the Rust Star domain, but to no avail. As they converse, Cole attempts once more, and, to their surprise, the call connects. Hello, what is going on? Seabass's visage materializes before them, revealing he is within a mech. You're in a mech? Mo Lee queries, his astonishment evident. Where are you? Cole presses. Mo Lee and I have arrived in the Rust Star domain, but there are two fleets engaged in battle. What has transpired? Just then, Seabass's surroundings shudder violently, and both witnesses observe the frenzied red lights flashing behind him. Who are you fighting against? Cole's urgency escalates. After a prolonged silence, Seabass finally responds. I am on the battlefield. Do not approach. Both fleets belong to the council members. You sought the council's assistance? But why are you fighting yourself? Cole's anxiety is palpable, fully aware of Seabass's empathic tendencies. Just then, Seabass's mech seems to be jolted by an impact, and he coughs violently before continuing. A Dream Young council member is aiding me. The Crimson Star Scar can grant citizenship, but the price is my life. Cole is taken aback. Why? Isn't the Dream Young council member the most popular among the civilians? The politicians, none of them are untainted. Seabass's gaze turned icy as he instructed, take Mr. Mo away. Do not involve yourself. The capabilities of these politicians far exceed our imagination. The Empire has long proclaimed that the Federation is but an empty shell, yet no one ponders where the flesh and blood of this giant has vanished. Ah, it has been drained by the politicians. Emoli inhaled sharply. Indeed, Mr. Mo. It is a pity we cannot engage in chess any longer. Upon seeing Emoli, a faint smile crept upon Seabass's lips. Why is it such a mess? In a moment of distraction while conversing with Emoli, Seabass was suddenly ambushed by a mecha, crashing violently against a warship. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth. The defense capabilities of the assault-class mecha were inadequate, especially on such a battlefield, where a single misstep could lead to destruction. I suppose I shouldn't have spoken. Emoli muttered, scratching his head. Never mind, wait for me. With that, he turned and made his way to the mecha bay. The voice of Xuanji resonated at the perfect moment, having locked onto Seabass's position. How audacious to charge into such a battlefield with a mere assault class. Emoli grumbled, then entered the blood debt cockpit. Is Jiang Yin's delivery ready? He mentioned he is a supreme member. Please amend the address. The address has been changed to the Rusty Star domain. How about if I assist you? Cole, open the hatch. The hatch of the spacecraft's belly swung open, revealing the flickering flames outside, erratic energy blasts, and exploding warships and mechas. A scent all too familiar. Emoli murmured to himself, then activated the thrusters and surged forth. Locking onto Seabass's location, a bright point appeared in Emoli's field of vision. It was Seabass. Still quite distant. Emoli began to accelerate. The expanse of the cosmic battlefield was indeed vast, with Xuanji's cloaking, although visible to the naked eye, in such chaos. Neither side was aware that a mecha had infiltrated. Just as Emoli neared the battlefield, a frenzied assault-class mecha, upon spotting someone not from its fleet, immediately sought to lock onto him. Hearing the scan warning, Emoli veered to the side, his speed reaching its zenith, streaking forth like a ray of light. Achieving the velocity of a Divine Retribution-class mecha startled the assault class into a retreat. Emoli caught up, piercing through its cockpit with the blood-packed blade from behind. With a forceful kick, he sent the mecha flying and locked onto Seabass's position, racing over. At this moment, Seabass was in dire straits. Surviving in such a battlefield with an assault-class mecha was already a formidable challenge, and with a resonance of merely 42, his capabilities were rather mediocre. Seabass was aware of his impending demise. It was a grave he had chosen from the outset. Struggling to eliminate an assault-class mecha, he couldn't help but chuckle bitterly. With such low resonance, he felt every part of the mecha responding sluggishly and was difficult to control. As the resonance connection prolonged, his head began to feel drowsy. Boom. Suddenly struck from behind, Sebastian's mech was sent flying, the impact jolting him back to reality. Stabilizing his position, he discovered it was a Fortress-class mech with a broken shoulder horn. The data from the system scan weighed heavily on Sebastian's heart. Although this Fortress-class mech was not in its prime, it was more than capable of dealing with him. The opponent, having discerned Sebastian's lack of strength, immediately charged forward, launching a relentless assault. The fire control of the Fortress-class mech appeared to be malfunctioning, forcing it to engage in close combat with a high-frequency particle blade. This was actually Sebastian's area of expertise, but within the confines of the mech, he could barely harness even a fraction of his abilities. Upon contact, he found himself at a disadvantage, struggling merely to defend himself. The engine output of the Fortress-class mech was on an entirely different level compared to the Assault class. Each strike required Sebastian to exert every ounce of his strength to withstand it. The side effects of the shared sensation continued to corrode his body, and when his mech failed to respond in time, he could only watch helplessly as his opponent severed his mech's arm with a single blow. Was this the end? A shadow of despair crossed Sebastian's features, but then he lifted his head defiantly. Come then. The Fortress-class pilot, sensing that his foe was unable to mount any significant resistance, raised his blade, preparing to deliver the final blow. In that moment, Sebastian did not flinch. Instead, he overloaded his engine and charged forward. Even with the kinetic energy from the overload, the Assault-class mech could only barely keep pace with the Fortress-class, rendering his movements somewhat comical in the eyes of the Fortress-class pilot. Let me send you on your way, he sneered, fully ramping up the engine's power. Boom. The cockpit erupted violently as a frost-covered blade pierced through it. The pilot, in disbelief, lowered his gaze to find himself cleaved in two, his lips moving soundlessly. Before him, Sebastian stood transfixed by the familiar blade. Why are you just standing there? Emoli muttered, striking a pose. With a swift motion, Emoli kicked the Fortress-class mech away and initiated a private channel connection with Sebastian. Long time no see, Sebastian. Why do you look so disheveled? Upon establishing the communication, Emoli laughed heartily. Sebastian's emotions were tumultuous, leaving him at a loss for words as Emoli appeared like a shimmering vision on the battlefield. I should be dead. No one deserves to die. Emoli shot back, spinning rapidly to deliver a powerful punch that obliterated an ambushing Assault-class mech midair. Why are you so eager to seek death? You should leave here first. Observing Emoli's decisive movements, a tinge of envy arose within Sebastian. I can leave whenever I want. Aren't you coming? Emoli circled around Sebastian, occasionally intercepting incoming mechs. I can't leave. Sebastian's tone grew calm. This fleet can only intercept Chen Yao's forces if I am the one to fall. Incredible. Sebastian, you have a fleet as reinforcements? Mo Lee exclaimed in surprise. Seabass could only manage a bitter smile. He was acutely aware of his own circumstances. This was the fleet of Senator Meng Yang, and the other party had agreed to assist him solely to seize control of the Chaotic Star region, yet he was merely an impediment to her ambitions. Did the senator also harbor interest in this wretched place? Mo Lee had not anticipated that such a seemingly insignificant location could attract the fleets of two senators to engage in conflict. Wait, you mentioned that the other fleet also belongs to a senator? A thought struck Mo Lee. It was improbable that these fleets could traverse the territories of multiple senators consecutively. This implied that this fleet was not overtly associated with any senator. Perhaps a phantom fleet? Seabass was uncertain why Mo Lee brought this up, but instinctively replied. One could say that. Mo Lee's eyes lit up. What if I were to assist you in neutralizing these two fleets? Seabass often found himself instinctively inclined to respond before forming his own questions. Upon hearing Mo Lee's proposition, he began to visualize the scenario of these two fleets meeting their demise here, and then replied, if both fleets were to perish here, they would reassess the strength of the Chaotic Star region. Senators are a cautious breed, fearful and opportunistic. They tend to be exceedingly wary in the face of unforeseen forces. You should have mentioned that sooner. Before Seabass could fully regain his composure, Mo Lee had already pushed the thruster power to its maximum. Just as a Fortress-class mech approached for a surprise attack, it spotted Mo Lee charging at full power, and evasion was no longer an option. As Mo Lee closed in, the Blood Covenant was unleashed in quick succession, and he continued to soar forward. After a brief distance, the Fortress-class mech exploded in a resounding crash. Seabass suddenly turned to gaze in the direction Mo Lee had departed, where the flagship of the Chun Yao fleet was located. A ludicrous thought emerged in his mind, causing him to widen his eyes in disbelief. Yet, knowing Mo Lee's audacious style, anything was indeed possible. Chapter 89, New Mech. Ratings are out. Please leave a good review to save the child. Mo Lee did not bother with any evasive maneuvers as he flew directly toward the flagship. The elite members of the Chun Yao fleet could hardly overlook his approach. Initially, two Fortress-class mechs rushed forward to intercept him, as the Tianfa-class mechs were engaged in fierce combat with Senator Meng Yang's mechs. As Mo Lee surged forward, the two mechs flanked him, and their fire control systems locked onto him simultaneously. However, the battlefield was chaotic by the time they successfully locked on. Mo Lee would already be weaving through the debris of battleships or maneuvering past engaged mechs, effectively obstructing the launch paths of their long-range weaponry. In desperation, they resorted to firing dozens of tracking missiles, but before they could reach Mo Lee, he skillfully redirected them toward two of their own battleships. The missile struck, tearing apart the armor on the opposite side of the battleships, and the blood debt surged forth. Before him lay three escort ships, and beyond them, the flagship of the Chun Yao fleet awaited. The enemy intended to flee. Xuanji suddenly spoke up, detecting a massive antimatter fluctuation. The fleet's antimatter engines were beginning to warm up for activation. Mo Lee's expression hardened, disregarding the two mechs attempting to intercept him, and charged straight ahead. The detection by Xuanji was indeed accurate. The engine port of the main ship had ignited, emitting a faint glow in its preheating state. As the energy output increased, the light rapidly intensified. The fleet's system naturally detected the incoming mech, Blood Debt. Should this Fortress-class mech successfully board the ship, the devastation it could wreak upon the main vessel would be utterly terrifying. With the Celestial Punishment-class reinforcements yet to arrive, they could only dispatch the nearest frigates. However, compared to the agile mechs, the frigates appeared somewhat clumsy. Two frigates positioned themselves, their side-mounted particle cannons aimed at Mo Lee. Subsequently, a barrage of high-energy light projectiles was unleashed, prompting the two mechs trailing Mo Lee to decisively retreat. The Blood Covenant transformed into spear form, and without flinching or dodging, Mo Lee charged into the barrage of light projectiles. A multitude of projectiles deviated under the onslaught of the spear form of the Blood Covenant, creating a path for Mo Lee. The personnel responsible for fire control on the two frigates were astounded. They wondered how their targeting could be so effortlessly locked onto him. Switch to the electromagnetic railgun, commanded the captains of the frigates decisively. While energy projectiles could be deflected due to their reliance on energy damage rather than impact, the electromagnetic cannon would deliver a direct force that Mo Lee would find difficult to withstand. Multiple windows on the two warships opened, with the flat-barreled electromagnetic railguns aimed at the distant Mo Lee. The speed of the electromagnetic railgun was somewhat slower, and consequently, the fire control system lagged. At that moment, the personnel in charge of targeting discovered they could no longer lock onto Mo Lee. The captains of the frigates were bewildered. How could he possibly know we had switched to the electromagnetic railgun? At this juncture, Mo Lee ceased his linear advance and instead executed a series of highly maneuverable flights, rendering him impossible to target. Unbeknownst to either side, the distance had closed to mere feet. The two mechs that had been following Mo Lee now forced to evade the energy projectile barrage, retreated further, struggling to keep up. Mo approached one of the frigates, deflecting 2 energy projectiles with his spear before landing on the frigate's deck. The spear of the Blood Covenant plunged forcefully into the floor, while Mo maximized his thrusters. With a resounding crash, specialized armor capable of withstanding the vacuum of space was cleaved apart, leaving a long gash in its wake as Mo propelled himself forward. He soared from the center of the ship to the window of the fleet, just in time to witness the terror etched on the faces of the bridge personnel inside. With a single punch, he shattered the glass window, and before he could even act further, the air within was swiftly evacuated, sending the occupants scattering in panic. Mo paid them no heed. Instead, he sought the ship's interface, allowing Xuanji to infiltrate the vessel. Within a mere 3 seconds, upon hearing Xuanji's voice, Mo hastily exited the ship, continuing his advance towards the main vessel. With one frigate compromised, the other was determined to thwart Mo at all costs. As only a few mechs remained on the main ship, should Mo approach, it would spell disaster for the main vessel. As Mo closed in, 5 Celestial Punishment-class mechs engaged in battle at the front line, taking advantage of a heavy particle beam fired from the main ship to forcibly divide the battlefield. Seizing the opportunity to retreat. At full speed, the Punishment-class mech surpassed Mo by a considerable margin. As Mo ascended to the main ship, 5 Punishment-class mechs returned, surrounding him entirely. 5 against 1, with a significant level advantage, yet the 5 dared not act recklessly. Beneath Mo's feet lay their main ship, and the aftermath of battle could potentially inflict damage upon it. Let us abandon this. We concede the chaotic star domain to you. Chun Yao's fleet evidently wished to surrender, as this fleet, whose origins were unknown, was far more formidable than they had anticipated. However, Mo had no intention of retreating. He stood his ground, confronting them defiantly. At this moment, on the battlefield's edge, where Cole was situated, a ship several dozen meters long emerged, as if its optical camouflage had been disabled. Startled, Cole activated the reconnaissance system, but upon seeing the enormous Starlight Express logo emblazoned on the hull, he breathed a sigh of relief. Yet, what was a Starlight Express vessel doing here? As these thoughts raced through his mind, the ship's belly opened, revealing a mech before him. Once this mech entered the cosmos, its engines roared to life. Cole's ship's scanners registered an instantaneous surge, an unidentified peak punishment-class mech. Energy readings approached those of a Star Ring class. It was insurmountable. A retreat was advised. Cole was left in shock. Who could possibly deploy a peak punishment-class mech in this location? No one answered his queries. And as the peak punishment mech was released, its engines warmed slightly before it transformed into a streak of light, dashing into the distant battlefield. With its dual flag wings shimmering in a deep azure glow, its speed escalated to another level, vanishing from Cole's sight in an instant. Is this truly a punishment class? Cole was left dumbfounded. Meanwhile, aboard Chun Yao's flagship, Mo gazed at the 5 menacing punishment-class mechs with a smile gracing his lips. The blood-packed spear plunged unhesitatingly into the deck below, startling the 5 punishment-class mechs, who hesitated to deploy their long-range weapons and rushed forward to thwart Mo's advance. However, Mo's thrust was merely a feint. As they approached, he swiftly withdrew the spear and veered to the side. The maneuverability of the punishment-class mechs was astonishingly agile, and the trajectories of the 5 mechs mirrored one another almost perfectly, their speed far exceeding Mo's, allowing them to close the gap in an instant. Due to their size, only 2 mechs could simultaneously launch an assault on Mo. With the stakes raised, they all beheld the unfolding scene. Armed with a battle blade, Mo faced the imminent dual assault of the 2 towering punishment-class mechs. Rather than confront their onslaught head-on, he employed a technique of force dissipation. As the 2 mechs charged, he deftly redirected their strikes with a technique akin to using a feather to deflect a heavy weight. Seizing this moment of misalignment, Mo advanced rather than retreating, positioning himself closely beside the 2 mechs and unleashing a barrage of punches to force them back. Before the remaining 3 could encircle him, Mo took a moment to glance at the Dreamyong fleet, only to discover that their judgment-class mechs showed no intention of pursuing their advantage. Were they afraid of retaliation? Initially, Mo intended to take advantage of the chaos, but upon noticing this information, he swiftly altered his strategy. In the midst of the tumultuous melee involving the judgment-class pilots, he had considerable maneuvering space. However, Dreamyang's decision to retreat allowed Mo to be exposed to Chun Yao's fleet. An increasing number of mechs returned for defense, abandoning severely damaged ships, and Dreamyong had no intention of pursuing the annihilation of their foes, allowing them to escape. At this moment, the 5 judgment-class mechs launched a series of assaults on Mo. Had it not been for the presence of several mechs on their flagship that hesitated to engage, Mo might have been overwhelmed. Despite his strength, He was merely a Pinnacle Bastion-class mech, forced to fight while retreating. At this juncture, it seemed that Dream Yang's fleet had realized that Seabass was still alive, prompting the mech units that were initially poised to return to their ships to mobilize, targeting Seabass, who was concealed within Chun Yao's fleet. This surge of mechs threw the battlefield into chaos once more, with several Judgment-class mechs leading the charge, and no one in the fleet could withstand their onslaught. This sudden resurgence left the Judgment-class mechs besieging Mo Li feeling anxious. What had initially seemed like a tactical retreat now appeared to be a sudden counterattack. With little time to ponder, they resolved to finish the battle quickly, leading one mech to overload its systems. Seeing this, Mo Li was startled into activating his own overload mode. The Judgment-class mechs left the overloaded unit behind, with the remaining 4 moving to counter the attack from Dream Yang's mech units. "Chester, let's end this swiftly," they declared before departing. With the pressure from the other 4 lifted, Mo Li found himself facing the overloaded mech with much greater ease. The only remaining pressure stemmed from the volatile energy unleashed by the opponent's overload. Each strike was a formidable challenge for Mo Li to parry, and one misstep could lead to catastrophic failure. "Fool," Chester's expression was cold. The energy consumption after overload was rapid, and as he watched Mo Li struggle to withstand the onslaught, impatience filled his eyes. With a connection rating of 98, he could distinctly sense that most of the force behind each of his attacks was dissipated, resulting in minimal impact on Mo Li. Meanwhile, his teammates were engaged in a 4-on-5 battle. Realizing this, he decided to abandon restraint, activating his high-frequency vibration particle cutter. "Let us see how you withstand this." Chester's voice was icy. Once the high-frequency vibration was engaged, any attempt by Mo Li to block would lead to his swift demise. As he closed in for a decisive strike, Mo Li hesitated to parry, attempting to retreat. However, the disparity in their speeds was insurmountable. Chester denied him any chance to escape, trailing him like a shadow before delivering a vicious slash. At that moment, Mo Li displayed no intention of defending himself, a faint smile gracing his lips. Finally, the moment had arrived. Just then, Chester's form was abruptly struck, sending him hurtling through the air. As he twisted mid-flight, a look of horror crossed his face as he beheld a colossal white mech, even larger than Blood Death. The parameters transmitted by the mech scanner caused his pupils to constrict abruptly, revealing an unidentified pinnacle-level punishment mech. In the channel, the 4 individuals instinctively turned around, only to witness a swift streak of luminescent white with hints of blue hurtling towards them, crashing violently into Chester's mech. An urgent alarm blared within their cockpit. Super high-energy reaction detected. Super high-energy reaction detected. In the next moment, Chester's mech erupted in a cataclysmic explosion, debris scattering in all directions. The main ship jolted slightly from the tremendous force of the blast. The others stared in disbelief, their eyes wide. Chester had activated overload mode, and his mech had already reached its zenith of power. How could it be obliterated in an instant? Before they could collect their thoughts, the mech of Senator Meng Yang had already infiltrated their fleet, commencing a spree of destruction. With an unidentified formidable foe behind them and the 5 major punishment mechs ahead, they found themselves in a precarious situation. Heroics were no longer an option. They promptly activated the communication channel, attempting to connect with Senator Meng Yang's punishment mechs. To their surprise, the connection was established. Before they could utter a word, the other side spoke first, demanding the surrender of Victor, stating they could retreat if he was handed over. Victor? The group was momentarily perplexed. Had Victor come here? Wasn't he commanding from the ground? Fearing they might misconstrue their intent as protective, the senator's punishment mechs quickly clarified. "We want him dead. If you can kill him in front of us, that would suffice." Though they were uncertain why this fleet aiding Victor sought his demise, the demand was made, and since they had established communication and the other side had halted, they decided to entertain the proposition. With this thought in mind, Will, who had attained the 9th star of punishment, spoke solemnly. "We agree." As his words echoed, the 5 punishment mechs on Senator Meng Yang's side indeed retreated in synchrony, while the other engaged mechs also withdrew. Effective. A wave of relief washed over Will, prompting him to activate the scanning system to survey the battlefield. As Meng Yang's fleet distanced itself, the chaos of the battleground subsided, and within mere seconds, he pinpointed Sebastian's location. "I found you." Will's heart raced as he prepared to charge forward, only to be restrained by Chris and Albert, one on each side. "Don't hold me back," he protested, but the 2 remained silent, simply gesturing towards Sebastian's position. From their vantage point, they could see beside Sebastian's battered mech, a pristine armor-clad mech with wings sprouting from its back. The scanner's readings confirmed every parameter, validating that this was indeed a pinnacle-level punishment mech. This scene left Will and his companions frozen in place. After the recent battle, their mech energy reserves were dwindling to around 50 or 60%. Facing a pinnacle punishment mech meant that a confrontation would likely result in the loss of 1 or 2 of them. Thus, they faltered. Will open the public channel and inquired, "Who are you?" In terms of demeanor, there was no room for hesitation, for their apparent strength surpassed that of this mech. "Who am I?" Emoli chuckled. "My identity is of little consequence. What truly matters is that you are piloting my spacecraft and mechs here. Do you have any idea how much energy this will consume?" The crowd was momentarily bewildered upon hearing Emoli's words. What did it mean to consume energy? And why were these mechs and spacecraft referred to as his? How could they be unaware that they were piloting his machines? In that moment of confusion, the wings on the back of Emoli's mech suddenly detached, transforming into two floating cannons that hovered beside him. The barrels ignited with a brilliant azure glow. And from a distance, alarms blared as Chris and Treelit's mechs were simultaneously locked on by the fire control system. Two beams of energy erupted from the floating cannons, the tremendous recoil causing them to be pushed back a short distance, and in an instant, the energy beams crashed into the two mechs. The shields flickered violently as the two pilots watched in horror as their energy levels plummeted, losing 20 points in the blink of an eye. Good heavens! The energy level of this weapon has reached that of the Star Ring class. It's from Dominance Technology, they exclaimed, immediately accelerating to evade another lock from Emoli. Others instinctively began to move as well. The power of a Star Ring class weapon was such that even a moment's lapse could lead to their demise without shields. Seeing this, the two floating cannons returned to Emoli's back, embedding themselves into the mech. Then, two exhaust flames erupted from the cannons as the thrusters activated, producing four robust flames that extended long behind. What followed was a terrifying burst of speed. Emoli's silhouette transformed into a slender streak, darting across the battlefield. He locked onto the two mechs, calculating that they likely had little energy left after enduring his previous attack. Other mechs recognized this as well and intended to assist the two pilots. However, Emoli's speed was unparalleled. In the blink of an eye, he had traversed most of the distance, arriving right before them. Such velocity! The thrusters were undoubtedly employing Dominance Technology. Several Judgment-class mechs were taken aback. The floating cannons alongside the engines clearly indicated that this was a peak Judgment-class mech, one belonging to a prestigious company. Achieving Judgment-class status required sharp insight, and they recognized the formidable capabilities of Emoli's new mech. Yet, the more they observed, the deeper their despair grew. This despair intensified when their attempts to intercept Emoli were effortlessly thwarted. It was as though the mech was an intangible feather, gliding with ease behind them. Suddenly, Chris and Treelit found themselves in close proximity to Emoli. Their hearts raced as they hastily drew their melee weapons. Emoli opened a compartment at his waist, swiftly extracting a short staff. With the energy supplied by the antimatter engine, the staff burst forth with a beam of crimson light, transforming into a colossal lightsaber. Without hesitation, he swung the blade. Chris retreated while Treelit charged forward to attack, as Emoli aimed for Chris. The two individuals coordinated seamlessly, executing rapid strikes in succession. However, Emoli reacted swiftly. After a swift slash that sliced through the air, he raised his hand and unleashed a powerful punch that struck Chui Li-Ti's wrist, causing the blade to veer slightly and miss Emoli. The thrusters erupted once more, propelling Emoli upwards to evade the targeting locks of Wei Air and AI Bo Sun behind him. As he maneuvered mid-air, the armor on his mech's elbows opened, revealing two miniature electromagnetic cannons that ascended, swiftly locking onto their targets and returning fire. Upon witnessing Emoli's aerial maneuver coupled with the targeting locks, both individuals turned pale with fear. What manner of creature is this? Although the electromagnetic cannons had a relatively slow firing rate, their power and impact were formidable, leaving the two no choice but to defend with their energy arm shields. In that very moment, Emoli sheathed his lightsaber, and his wings suddenly erupted with two blazing white trails, further enhancing his speed. Upon completing the turn, Emoli charged once more towards Chris and Chui Li-Ti. The increased velocity allowed Emoli to close the distance in a mere 2 seconds, as his wings detached and soared into his hands. The floating cannons, resembling steel wings, perfectly fused with Emoli's wrists, forming two massive blades. With the sharp tips of the wings thrusting forward, Chris and Chui Li-Ti hastily retreated. A hum resonated as energy accumulated at the tips of the wings, reminiscent of the previous beams. Instinctively, they activated their shields. In the next moment, two beams were unleashed. Swiftly reducing their mech's energy to critical levels, the shields flickered and vanished, and Emoli had already appeared before them. The blades formed by the floating cannons pierced into their cockpits, penetrating their bodies without damaging the underlying mech structure. Before the blades could be retracted, Emoli found himself targeted by fire control systems. With calm precision, he withdrew the blades and began to descend. At that moment, the floating cannons disengaged automatically. He executed a sideways maneuver and unsheathed his lightsaber, delivering a powerful strike. A beam grazed past him, while another was cleaved in two by Mo Lee's sword. Is this even human? Wei Er gasped as he witnessed the crimson lightsaber slice through his beam, unable to restrain his expletive. Yet the battle must persist, even as his confidence waned. Even the pinnacle of divine punishment, the 9 stars, could not quell the profound sense of helplessness that arose within him when faced with Mo Lee. After breaking through the beams, Mo Lee charged forward, brandishing the lightsaber. He was there to protect Victor. Will you not act? At that moment, Wei Er could no longer afford to hesitate. He shouted to the several divine punishment class mechs of Congresswoman Meng Yang. Meanwhile, the 5 individuals on the other side were consulting with Meng Yang. The pinnacle of divine punishment? Whose is it? Meng Yang's voice resonated through their squad channel as the leader, Hansen, replied solemnly, unknown. This is a brand new mech, and we are still unclear on its parameters. The opponent's mech is equipped with 3 types of hegemonic technology. It is likely associated with those companies. On the other end of the communication, a middle-aged woman clad in elegant attire rested her chin on her hand, her fingers lightly tapping the table. Can it be identified through technology? The system is still processing, and the style is not particularly evident. Hansen fixated intently on the distant figure of Mo Lee, who effortlessly overwhelmed both Will and Eberson, driving them back relentlessly, causing a twitch in the corner of his eye. If he had the authority, he would undoubtedly intervene at this moment. The prowess of this mech exceeded his expectations, if left unchecked. It was likely that the 5 of them would meet the same fate as those with Chen Yao. However, Meng Yang's approach was characterized by a discreet development strategy, refraining from provoking others. The background displayed by Mo Lee was not merely formidable, it was extraordinary. The presence of 3 dominant technologies was not something just any company could present. Furthermore, the fact that these technologies spanned 3 distinct categories indicated that the other party had made significant advancements in each domain. The floating artillery, energy swords, and thrusters represented the realms of ranged combat, close-quarters combat, and kinetic energy, respectively. There were few commonalities among them, and achieving dominance in each field required an astronomical investment. Hansen could never have anticipated encountering such a monstrous mech in a location deemed remote for a mission. It was equipped as if it were a core member of a major corporation, integrating cutting-edge technologies capable of rivaling ordinary Starlight-class mechs. This was troublesome, as Meng Yang's proxy. Their mech configuration lacked the exclusive dominant technologies of Meng Yang. If recognized during battle, it would pose significant complications for Meng Yang. At that moment, Hansen racked his brain, unable to fathom which company possessed such exaggerated dominant technologies that were comprehensively developed across multiple fields. His brow furrowed as he awaited Meng Yang's response. Meanwhile, Meng Yang recognized the precariousness of the situation. Victor had eliminated her personnel, and if they survived, she could not trust the chaotic star domain. She did not wish for Victor to return one day and rally the chaos against her. The hidden threat must be eradicated. With this thought, Meng Yang spoke coldly, instructing to bypass him and eliminate Victor. Action was imminent. Hansen felt a jolt of alarm and quickly made a decision. John and I will intercept him. Eric, Otto, and Morris will take down Victor. As they spoke, in the distance, Eberson was inadvertently struck by Mo Lee, sent hurtling backward, and fell silent. Will was taken aback. Was there truly a combat mech technique involved? With such an array of technologies, the engine must possess immense power to manifest them. The prowess displayed by this mech was already on par with that of a council member. At this moment, the discussion among Hansen and the others had barely concluded when Will, unable to wait for their action, turned and fled without hesitation. Seeing him devoid of fighting spirit, Hansen bellowed in anger, "If you dare to run, I will order the fleet to attack." At this, Will felt a surge of frustration and halted. They had little mech protection left for the fleet, and losing the fleet would leave him adrift in the vastness of space. Currently, the technology for mechs to traverse the galaxy remained in the theoretical stage. "Come back, we will face this together." Hansen had yet to finish his sentence when a white figure surged towards him at high speed. "Do you not regard me as a person?" Mo Lee's voice echoed as he effortlessly infiltrated their unencrypted channel. Observing their casual team formation, he charged forward without hesitation. The crimson lightsaber radiated brilliantly, causing Hansen's pupils to constrict in alarm as he swiftly retreated. Simultaneously, the 3 others nearby locked onto Mo Lee with their fire control systems, with John piloting a massive heavy mech nearly 20 meters tall. As the 3 opened fire, missiles and energy beams surged toward him. The dual wings formed by floating cannons ignited with fiery trails, and with a sudden burst of speed, Mo Lee easily evaded their targeting systems, continuing his pursuit of Hansen. At this moment, Hansen adjusted his stance. His mech, clad in black and red, appeared relatively agile, wielding a pair of particle laser guns. Upon seeing Mo Lee's assault, he unhesitatingly raised his weapons, locking onto him. The barrels glowed ominously as a torrent of laser projectiles filled the air, complemented by the firepower of the three mechs, encircling Mo Lee in a perilous situation. Yet, he remained composed. Seabass, stay hidden. I will soon take a hostage to exchange for you. From the outset, Mo Lee had no intention of prioritizing Seabass's safety in this conflict. Although Seabass was formidable, the opposing team was equally impressive, 6 punishment-level fighters supported by 2 fleets. Protecting Seabass while engaging in battle presented an extraordinary challenge. If his mech had been equipped with a shield, it might have been feasible. However, Mo Lee's current mech bore no protective barriers, relying solely on a specialized coating to withstand the blasts of large-area weapons, in addition to its inherent material strength. Meanwhile, Seabass, witnessing Will's approach, was momentarily stunned. Seeing Mo Lee ensnared in a trap, he gritted his teeth and attempted to flee. Though the distance between him and Will continued to diminish, Mo Lee gripped his lightsaber with both hands, channeling the surging energy from his engine core, unleashing a torrent of vibrant light particles. The crimson lightsaber elongated abruptly, and the swirling light particles surged with heightened intensity, emanating a formidable aura even from afar. Clang, clang, clang. The dancing lightsaber deflected the incoming laser projectiles. Hansen had anticipated this and, without surprise, activated his mech's high-speed mode. The fire control radar locked onto Mo Lee, drawing 2 lines of fire and restricting his potential escape routes. John, attempting to intercept from behind, could not match Mo Lee's speed and fell further behind. After a futile barrage of long-range fire, Eric and his companions turned to pursue Seabass. Mo Lee, aware of this shift, exhaled lightly as his wings suddenly split, transforming into 4. 2 concealed thrusters activated, propelling Mo Lee's speed to new heights. Upon witnessing this sudden acceleration, Hansen's eyes narrowed. His extensive combat experience instinctively prompted him to overload his engine. His mech, designed for guerrilla tactics, boasted high agility and attack frequency, allowing for continuous assaults on the enemy, yet its vulnerability lay in its feeble defenses. Speed was undoubtedly his source of pride. Yet when Mo Lee activated those 2 hidden thrusters, his velocity surpassed that of his own. At that moment, he was not even overloaded. If Mo Lee closed in and delivered a strike, it would likely spell his demise. Behind him, John felt utterly helpless. He had initially believed that his formidable armor could withstand Mo Lee's escape with Seabass, only to realize that Mo Lee had no intention of rescuing Seabass but instead locked onto Hansen. A relentless barrage of laser fire erupted from his dual pistols, yet each shot was effortlessly parried by Mo Lee with his lightsaber. What a monster! Hansen could no longer contain himself. Could a mere human truly slice through lasers? Unbeknownst to him, within the mech, a wealth of data flashed before Mo Lee's eyes, while the celestial mechanism operated at high speed, calculating every laser trajectory, velocity, and target lock with precision. As he effortlessly deflected the laser projectiles, Mo Lee's flight speed remained unwavering. Hansen, in a state of terror, realized that even when overloaded, the distance between them continued to diminish. The distant figure wielding the lightsaber appeared to him as a white harbinger of death. In his panic, Hansen's hands trembled, causing him to misfire several lasers, inadvertently accelerating Mo Lee's advance. John, recognizing the futility of the chase, ceased his pursuit, while Hansen continued his flight. Mo Lee abruptly halted his pursuit, spun around, and sheathed his lightsaber. The dual floating cannons on his back descended before him, connecting midair to form a 10-meter-long weapon resembling a heavy sniper rifle. Grasping the colossal cannon with one hand, Mo Lee's shoulder armor opened, revealing a slot perfectly designed to accommodate the cannon's rear. With both hands, he steadied the weapon and locked onto John. The side armor of the cannon opened, exposing a brilliant blue energy conduit through which a torrent of energy surged, so potent that it began to overflow into the void of space. Taking a deep breath, Mo Lee disregarded Hansen, who was hastily attempting to retreat. The restless engine continuously fed energy into the massive cannon, which, upon entering the cannon's body, underwent a series of complex transformations before accumulating power. Within Mo Lee's fire control system, John's mech underwent a transformation, shifting from its humanoid form to that of an artillery weapon. Upon realizing he was locked onto, John's expression shifted dramatically. However, he could not halt the transformation and could only hope that Hansen would intervene to stop Mo Lee. After the fire control lock was established, the anticipated attack did not materialize. Had Hansen succeeded? John's face brightened, while Mo Lee, in the distance, noted that another figure had also been ensnared within his targeting system. 5 triangles encircling it in a sequence, and then the yellow border turned crimson. Lock-on successful. The instant those 4 words appeared, Mo Lee decisively activated the colossal cannon. The restraints released, and the long-accumulated energy surged forth, coalescing through the cannon's mouth into a mighty torrent of particles. This particle stream traveled at an astonishing speed, Jean barely managed to activate his shield, but within a mere second, the shield could not withstand the overwhelming force and shattered before the energy was fully expended. The armor disintegrated under the relentless onslaught of energy flows, and Jean's flesh and blood met a similar fate. All he could perceive was a blinding whiteness before consciousness slipped away. The energy stream surged forward, racing past Jean and striking Will, who stood closest to Seabass. With incredible velocity, Will had no time to activate his shield, as his system failed to register any warning of fire control lock. As awareness faded, his final thought was a curse for his incompetent teammate. Had it been a normal circumstance, he might have remained alert to threats from behind. But Mo Lee's overwhelming power had rendered him and Hansen as inseparable as a single thread. Any ambush from Hansen and the others would yield no benefit. Mo Lee had clearly intended to exchange Seabass for their lives, and as the one nearest to Seabass, the sooner he could capture him, the sooner they could escape danger. Ultimately, he could never have anticipated that Mo Lee would unleash a long-range particle cannon strike while encircled by 5 individuals. The method behind Mo Lee's astonishing feat would remain a mystery to him. After unleashing his shot, Mo Lee was also met with a barrage from Hansen. The special protective coating absorbed a significant portion of the energy attack, yet some managed to breach the surface. Hansen believed his strike had been effective, only to find that Mo Lee's mech bore merely a few mottled marks on its back, with the armor itself intact. Indeed, this was the result of an energy projectile fired hastily without charge. Had it struck the bare armor, the outcome would surely have differed. What material was he using? Not only was he perplexed, but Mo Lee himself had not anticipated such an outcome. He was prepared for damage, but found himself with hardly a scratch. I have never fought such an opulent battle. Old Jiangtu. Mo Lee turned to Hansen with a menacing grin. Did you enjoy your little shot just now? Come, let us have a duel. Hansen was taken aback, instinctively canceling his charge and fire control as he fled. He had no desire to be locked onto and suffer a hit. John's shield would not withstand it, and his own certainly would not. What a coward, Mo Lee muttered, as the giant cannon disassembled, transforming into wings that settled upon his back, enhancing his speed. Hansen glanced at Eric and the others, instructing, "You continue pursuing Victor. If he gets away, I'll alert you." Meanwhile, the 4 remained in shock at Will's abrupt demise, hesitant to act recklessly, unwilling to leave their backs exposed to a hapless ally. However, with Hansen's directive, they could not linger. They maintained a vigilant eye during their flight, wary of a sudden strike from Mo Lee. At that moment, Chen Yao's fleet, shaken by Will's fall, fragmented into disarray. The fleet commander contemplated retreat. However, the Mingyang fleet had activated their curvature speed field, complicating any escape. They could only engage their pulse engines to withdraw from the battlefield. Witnessing this scene amidst the thrill of battle, Mo Lee's eyes widened in fury as he bellowed, "Don't run." Boom. The floating cannon unfurled its 4 wings, engines overloading. As Mo Lee's mech was engulfed in a dazzling blaze of tailfire, the already astonishing speed of Mo Lee surged once more, leaving a trail of flame in his wake as he soared through the air, drawing closer at an alarming velocity, much to Hansen's astonishment. "What on earth? You shouldn't be pushing yourself like this. You hold the advantage." Hansen was left dumbfounded. The distance that had once required overloading to bridge was now rapidly diminishing, even as Mo Lee too engaged in overload. In the distance, Eric and his companions were still far from Victor, who was not merely standing still for them to capture. It was too late for them to return. Their only recourse was to threaten Victor with his life. With this thought, Hansen shouted, "Don't hold back. Overload everything." The mech seemed to go berserk. Eric and his companions jolted at the command, instinctively glancing at Hansen's condition. They had yet to face Mo Lee directly and were unaware of the extent of his pressure. They still believed they had time. Little did they know that Hansen was already drenched in sweat, and in the brief moment they took to observe, Mo Lee had closed the distance to less than 10,000 meters. In the vastness of the cosmos, 10,000 meters could vanish in the blink of an eye. When Hansen realized that they had instinctively chosen to observe rather than act, he felt darkness encroach upon his vision. The overload had reached its limit, and Mo Lee had finally arrived before him. The crimson glow of the energy sword pulsed ominously, a harbinger of death enveloping him. "I can't stop it. I can't stop it." This thought spiraled uncontrollably within him as he instinctively sought to flee, but at that critical moment, the overload ended. Once the overload ceased, the sudden drop in energy caused the engine to falter, leading to a catastrophic decline in kinetic energy provided to the mech. The feedback rendered his movement sluggish. But Mo Lee was unperturbed, thrusting his sword forward without hesitation. Hansen, now unable to even deploy his shield after the overload, found his fragile mech effortlessly pierced by the ferocious particle sword, as if it were made of paper. Withdrawing the sword, Mo Lee disregarded Hansen and turned his threat towards the trio in the distance. "If he dies, none of you will escape." Eric and his companions, Witnessing Hansen's demise and the menacing advance of Mo Lee were nearly paralyzed with fear. Hansen was a pinnacle superpilot of the Heavenly Punishment 9 stars. How could he not utilize the power of hegemonic technology? The overwhelming strength on display sent shivers down their spines. They found themselves in a predicament, with Mo Lee closing in at high speed. A quick calculation revealed that they would likely be unable to catch up with Seabass before Mo Lee arrived. His velocity was simply too great, and no one knew how long he could maintain overload before his engine reached its limit. In this critical moment, Eric's expression hardened. They needed to eliminate Victor to complete their mission first. The other two, contemplating the dire consequences of failure, felt a chill run through them and decisively chose to continue their pursuit of Seabass. Damn it, Emily cursed under his breath. Mid-flight, two floating cannons converged to form a colossal artillery piece, aimed at the flagship of the fleeing Chuanyao fleet, and unleashed a devastating shot. Without any mecha to obstruct its path, Mo Lee's precise strike obliterated the flagship's pulse engine in a single, thunderous explosion. The rear engine erupted in a violent explosion. And despite the ship's onboard systems promptly severing power to the affected area, the entire vessel shuddered uncontrollably, losing a significant portion of its propulsion, akin to a beached leviathan adrift in the void of space. Meanwhile, during this brief moment of delay, Eric and his companions had closed in considerably. The floating artillery once again transformed into dual wings as Mo Lee plunged forward. Seabass, on the other hand, was already at full throttle, yet he could only marginally increase the distance between them. The disparity between the Assault class and the Judgment class was monumental, with their engines providing energy outputs that were worlds apart. The gap between the two parties was rapidly diminishing, and through the scanning system, Seabass observed the relentless pursuit of Mo Lee behind him. Although Mo Lee's speed vastly surpassed that of Eric and his crew, it appeared that he would not reach them in time. Mr. Mo, Seabass suddenly spoke. What is it? Thank you. Don't get sentimental on me, you 1T perish. I have a trump card, though I am reluctant to use it due to its substantial energy consumption. Seabass chuckled abruptly. Mo Lee remained as unpredictable as ever, yet this brought him genuine joy. The distance among the three factions was narrowing, and as Seabass glanced at the incessantly flashing energy alerts within his mech, at one moment, the engine jolted and ceased to function. I may not be able to proceed any further. In that instant, the three Judgment-class mechs behind him swiftly closed the gap. Seabass exited the resonance mode, rendering his mech a mere iron coffin. He then opened a concealed compartment above him, revealing a blood-red button. A low resonance level can be quite troublesome, he sighed, realizing that even self-destruction required manual activation. Just as he reached out to press it, three figures darted past him, confronting the three Judgment-class mechs behind them. Seabass abruptly reconnected to the resonance, turning to look back. Before him stood Demang, Lao Chi, and Lao Chung in their mechs, facing off against Eric and his companions. The sudden appearance of these three Judgment-class mechs completely disrupted Eric's plans, prompting them to engage overload mode without hesitation in an attempt to bypass these newcomers. Their mech levels were not on the same tier, and their skills differed significantly. Under ordinary circumstances, they could defeat them in no time. However, this was no ordinary situation, as a terrifying mech was relentlessly pursuing them. Seabass was their only glimmer of hope, and with that hope now obstructed, they were driven to desperation. Get out of the way, Eric bellowed, but Lao Ching stood his ground, showing no intention of allowing him to escape. Demang and Lao Chung remained equally resolute. Their mech energy reserves dwindling, and engaging overload was exceedingly risky. Demang, having barely engaged, had already lost a leg. The pain surged through him in the resonant state, causing him to grit his teeth, yet he refused to relent, instead grasping the energy readings of the Morris reactor in a frenzy as they climbed alarmingly high. Upon detecting the readings, Morris realized that this madman intended to self-destruct, struggling violently in sheer terror. In the midst of this turmoil, Mo Lee, in an overload state, finally arrived. He first disabled the energy-draining overload mode, and after a brief moment of delay, he seized Morris with one hand and kicked away Demang, who was preparing for self-detonation. Morris had not yet regained his composure when Mo Lee thrust his sword through the cockpit. Upon witnessing Mo Lee, Eric and Otto felt as though they had plunged into an icy abyss. In but an instant, Morris met his demise, and the force with which Mo Lee severed him from Demang was no ordinary divine punishment. Demang was momentarily dazed by a powerful kick. Upon seeing Morris slain, he hastily ceased the reactor from overloading. Lao Chung and Lao Chi, noting the paralysis of Eric and Otto, cautiously returned to Seabass's side. Boss, who is this? Seabass sighed softly, my employer. After successfully rescuing Seabass, Mo Lee's tension eased. So, do you wish to continue fighting? No more fighting, they replied in unison, their voices resonating through the public channel. Shut down the engines. Mo Lee spoke coldly, leaving them with no choice but to comply. Exit the mechs. Their faces shifted with concern. Although their combat suits allowed for brief survival in space, emerging would render them as helpless as fish on a chopping block. Are you still waiting for me to pierce your cockpit? Mo Lee's next words prompted them to hastily vacate their mechs. At least outside, they had a chance to survive. Perhaps the distant fleet could rescue them. As they emerged from their mechs, clad in combat suits and floating in the void, Mo Lee approached their machines. His mech dimmed, entering a state of empathic disconnection. Just as everyone wondered about his intentions, Mo Lee exited his mech and entered Eric's. Empathic connection established. Eric stared in astonishment as his mech powered up. In an unseen realm, within the fleet's network, an invisible hand swiftly unfurled. Ah, this mech indeed possesses a high-level access. I have successfully shut down their fleet's engines. In the distant fleet, the command team on the bridge suddenly noticed that all lights within the bridge extinguished simultaneously. The engines silenced, and the ecological systems came to a standstill. It was not just the flagship. Immediately following it, every landing craft, escort vessel, and assault ship experienced the same fate. The cessation of ecological systems plunged everyone into panic. As the air dwindled, they sought to escape the warship, only to find the hatches tightly sealed. Despair spread throughout the fleet, halting their operations. The Chunyao fleet, eager to flee, discovered that their flagship's engine had been shattered after many escort ships had departed. Yet, they glimpsed another avenue for escape. Unbeknownst to them, the warp field had collapsed. However, just as they sought to clear the remnants of the explosive pulse engine and activate the warp drive, a white streak of light breached their flagship's armor and surged into the bridge. Greetings. Mo Lee, piloting the mech, revealed a chilling smile. Xuanji, take control here. In the vastness of space, the frail human body stood no chance against the harsh environment. The gaping hole created by Mo Lee rapidly siphoned away the air, plunging those within into a state of asphyxiation within mere seconds. As Xuanji began to take control of the spacecraft, she adeptly sealed the various hatches. Meanwhile, Mo Lee piloted his mech in search of other large escort vessels. In light of electronic warfare, many escort ships were separated from the main vessel. Only those like Eric, who were directly connected to the core network of the flagship, could achieve such a link, and only mechs of the Heavenly Punishment level could do so. With the flagship under control and the Heavenly Punishment mechs entirely annihilated, the remaining escort ships and smaller vessels dared not continue the fight, hastily retreating in an attempt to escape. With no one to impede their flight, Mo Lee could do little to stop them, ultimately managing to intercept only a few ships. As for Chinyao's fleet, aside from the flagship and a few incapacitated escort vessels, the remaining ships activated their warp drives and fled. This great battle concluded in an unforeseen manner, with both Meng Yang and Chun Yao receiving the news almost simultaneously. Meng Yang rose, her elongated phoenix eyes gleaming with frost. The light screen sprung forth from her star network device, and her slender fingers danced upon the display, creating dozens of boxes in a matter of moments. Each box revealed a figure, all of whom bowed slightly upon seeing Meng Yang. Chaos had erupted in the chaotic star region. Meng Yang spoke plainly, stating that someone had intervened. Who is it? She inquired. Is it that handsome fellow? He possesses formidable strength, possibly a star ring level pilot? Meng Yang replied solemnly, no, it is not a star ring level. It is a pinnacle Heavenly Punishment mech, and this individual is remarkably strong. Now, who among you has completed your tasks? Go take a trip to the chaotic star region. I must secure this territory. A pinnacle Heavenly Punishment? Do we have any information on him? Upon hearing this, Meng Yang forwarded the intelligence gathered from the fleeing escort vessels. We have identified him. He is from the Dongli Star region, and the Empire is currently conducting a massive manhunt for him. Investigating Mo Lee's information was not particularly challenging, primarily because he had piloted the Blood Debt there, and his appearance had been recorded by an escort ship at that time. By utilizing the Blood Debt for a star network search, they could effortlessly uncover Mo Lee's identity. Dongli Star region? Their reach extends so far? Which senator is involved? From the Galaxy Academy. Upon hearing the name of the Galaxy Academy, a momentary silence fell over the crowd. These academies within the Federation were truly colossal entities. Although the senators were corrupt, they had to tread carefully when it came to financial matters, while these academies could openly seek federal funding. Despite their internal disarray and decentralized power, the mechs produced by the Academy were generally among the finest of their class. At this moment, they were all observing the battle between Mo Lee and Hansen, and after watching, they gained a clearer understanding. Within the Heavenly Punishment ranks, few could defeat him. At least, we could not. If we were to dominate the chaotic star region, it would require the deployment of 24 royal knights. A flicker of impatience crossed Meng Yang's eyes. The Heavenly Punishment pilots before her were all meticulously trained by her, yet none were capable of combat, necessitating the involvement of her direct lineage. Taking a deep breath, she ended the communication and established a contact. Deploy a royal knight to the chaotic star region. Understood. Meanwhile, Chun Yao was seething with rage. This time, failing to eliminate Victor was unfortunate enough, but losing an entire fleet was infuriating. Curse it. Curse that accursed Star River Academy. Emoli. Chun Yao found himself amidst a chaotic scene, surrounded by the remnants of items he had shattered in his fury, while those nearby trembled and dared not approach. He had also received information from Mo Li through the escort ship he managed to return on. A brief inquiry revealed that Star River Academy was behind him, and that mecha was also a masterpiece of theirs. Taking a deep breath to force himself to regain composure, Chun Yao was just about to seek assistance when a communication came through. The moment he saw the caller's name, his pupils contracted, signaling to others to vacate the vicinity before he answered the call. When will the next batch of materials arrive? Chun Yao's heart raced. There had been some complications in the chaotic star domain, but he had sought alternatives from other regions. You only have 3 days. I understand. Cold sweat trickled down his forehead as he felt as though an invisible hand was gripping his heart. The stability of the chaotic star domain had been long-standing. It was imperative to resolve matters swiftly. All right, but it seems others have set their sights here too. I will send you 2-star ring-level pilots. If you fail to reclaim your position, it will be the end of the line. Chun Yao nodded repeatedly, and after the communication ended, he collapsed onto the sofa, utterly drained. The implications of the disruption in the chaotic star domain were severe, and the sudden appearance of that fleet had left its origins shrouded in mystery. Who could it possibly be? Rage simmered on Chun Yao's face. Had it not been for that fleet's unwelcome intervention, Emoli would not have had the time to rescue Victor. Yet, the motives behind the attempt to eliminate Victor remained unclear. In the chaotic star domain, the entire Crimson Star Scar personnel were mobilized to clear the battlefield. As remnants of warships were dragged back into the star system, Seabass sighed softly. This was merely the beginning. Given his understanding of Meng Yang and Chun Yao, they would not relinquish control of this area easily. Emoli patted Seabass on the back. Why such melancholy? It is I who have burdened you. Hearing this, Emoli's expression turned serious as he pointed towards Cole, who stood in a daze at a distance. No, you have not burdened me. Seabass turned to see Cole gazing blankly at the distant fleet, as though lost in a dream. Only moments ago, Emoli had approached him, inquiring if those fleets could be deployed. The question had left him utterly bewildered. Cole, the mothership of the Star Torch level fleet? Despite some battle damage, the Star Torch class was modularized to a high degree, and the damage was unlikely to affect other modules significantly. The most considerable impairment was merely one of the pulse engines. It was not a warp engine, and he, Cole, could repair that. Moreover, aside from these 2 fleets, there were also a batch of Thunder Punishment level mechas and Fortress level mechas, all ready for deployment. It could be said that whoever acquired these 2 fleets, with a bit of recruitment for pilots and crew, could immediately assemble 2 operational Star Torch level fleets with minimal loss of combat capability. Additionally, Cole meticulously examined the various weapon modules and parameters of these 2 fleets, noting that they were top tier even among the Star Torch class. One can only surmise the involvement of the legislators. Such a formidable fleet, complete with an array of configurations, renders the minor damages inconsequential. If placed on the black market, the repercussions would be unfathomable to Cole. Yet, this batch of vessels cannot even traverse the star gates. These 2 fleets are thoroughly unregistered. The only way to sell them would be through clandestine contacts in the black market, compelling buyers to engage in transactions within the chaotic star regions. What? 3 fleets? Seabass gazed into Mo Li's eyes, sensing an inexplicable exhilaration at the thought that the 2 prominent legislators would not relent. Was it merely an illusion? Who would dare to provoke a legislator while brimming with eagerness? Within the Federation, legislators are figures of immense reverence, their displeasure to be avoided at all costs, let alone incurring their wrath. Even the most esteemed pilots vie to become their retainers, for in this era, aligning oneself with a legislator is akin to embarking on a path to greatness. Various warships, mechs, and advanced technology are at one's disposal, alongside the intoxicating allure of power. Throughout the years, the electoral system established at the inception of the Federation has devolved into a mere instrument of privilege for a select few. Those who have had even the slightest brush with legislators are acutely aware of the staggering extent of their authority, which in their respective star domains renders them akin to local monarchs. Scholars of the Empire have remarked that the current Federation resembles a rotting carcass, devoured by maggots. Seabass finds this description entirely fitting. Yet, amidst such an environment, he encounters someone like Mo Li. This is untenable. There is no way to sell these vessels. Cole's distressed voice pulled Seabass from his reverie. What? Mo Li's voice pierced through the air, his expression visibly fraught with anxiety. Wait a moment. Why can't we sell them? These are Star Torch-class warships. I deliberately avoided critical areas when I acquired them. Repairs should be straightforward. Cole looked utterly dejected. As a middleman, to possess items that he could not sell was a peculiar form of humiliation. However, The reality was that he had not preserved them. If these vessels relied solely on warp travel to reach the buyers, it would be an eternity before they arrived. As for the Northern Star Domain, Cole could assert with certainty that outside of the legislators and official factions, no one could absorb this fleet. But if it were legislators or official entities, these items could never see the light of day. Even if a legislator were to privately transact with him, Cole would dare not engage. These legislators are known to be merciless. Mo Lee, too, began to feel the pressure. If they could not sell them, all his efforts over the past days would be in vain. Think of something. Quickly. Mo Lee pressed his hands on Cole's shoulders, shaking him frantically. Cole felt as though his brain was about to be scrambled. This simply would not do. Seabass looked on helplessly at the two, declaring, I have a solution. Mo Lee abruptly turned, feeling as though Seabass was radiating a brilliant golden light at that moment. What solution? Talker. Both Mo Lee and Cole turned to him, their expressions clearly indicating their intrigue. Mo Lee, are you certain you want to share what you're suggesting? Cole, my friend, I have just sold him a few mechs, and both of them were expressions that clearly conveyed disbelief. Seabass raised his hand, signaling them to remain calm. Firstly, concerning the incident of the fleet I nurtured being attacked on Talker's side, only Cole's information is available. Thus, it is indeed our opportunity to act. However, would he not connect the dots? Cole glanced at Mo Lee. The characteristics were still too conspicuous. After a skirmish, selling the opponent's mechs and warships, one would be hard-pressed to find many like him in the entire Federation, especially within the same star domain. Talker surely could not be foolish enough to overlook this. Upon hearing this, Seabass spread his hands wide. Chen Yao and Talker were in cahoots and would surely collaborate to deal with Meng Yang. Although Talker and Chen Yao shared a cooperative relationship, there seemed to be an underlying competition. He likely aspired to dominate the chaotic star domain. Cole hesitated, recognizing the inherent risks. Seabass shook his head slightly. While risks were indeed present, I shall bear them. Both Mo Lee and Cole turned to him, their eyes filled with astonishment. I will negotiate with him. Even if he doubts the value of the two fleets, he will only seek trouble with me after the transaction is complete. If I am not mistaken, Talker would be quite eager to acquire Chen Yao's fleet. At this juncture, the usually serious Seabass allowed a faint smile to grace his lips. When that time comes, the chaotic star domain will consist of 3 factions. Cole's eyes widened in shock. Isn't that going to create utter chaos? Seabass's gaze turned frigid. Meng Yang leaves me no path to survival. The more disorder, the better. After speaking, he turned his attention to Mo Lee, who remained silent and seemingly lost in thought. Mr. Mo, retaliation from the major factions will undoubtedly follow. You should return to the Dongli star domain. With your affiliation to the Star River Academy, they cannot harm you. Mo Lee was hardly attentive, murmuring to himself instead. 3 factions. Will there be Star Ring level 1s? How do we acquire Star Ring level 1s? Cole is rather unreliable. The channels are a concern. I wonder if old Jiang will accept. Seabass caught fragments of his words, sensing something amiss. However, Mo Lee had already antagonized 2 major factions for his sake, and Seabass did not wish for him to remain here, awaiting the faction's retribution. In fact, to reassure Mo Lee, he had devised a plan. The ensuing chaos among the 3 factions would provide him a chance for survival. As for the proposal previously offered by Meng Yang, which entailed his demise in exchange for citizenship across the star domain, Seabass had long ceased to care. After all, events had transpired, lives had been taken, and discussing peace now was far too late. Seabass had never been one to dwell on regrets. He only pressed forward. As for blaming Mo Lee, he could not harbor such sentiments. Mo Lee acted to save him, and he was well aware of this. The impending turmoil in the chaotic star domain would undoubtedly be far from tranquil, and Seabass was mentally prepared. What weighed most heavily on him was the entanglement with Mo Lee. Yet, inevitably, Mo Lee was destined to disappoint him. Mr. Mo, Seabass raised his voice slightly, just enough to rouse Mo Lee from his reverie. Mo Lee indeed snapped back to reality, exclaiming, what is it? Recently, the chaotic star domain is bound to be bustling. I suggest you leave this place first. Upon hearing this, Mo Lee expressed his thoughts without hesitation. Impossible. I have already made my nest. Made a nest? What does a good nest mean? Cole asked, bewildered. Do not concern yourself with such trivial details. Mo Lee coughed lightly. Seabass, who is that? He is my dearest friend. A bond forged through life and death. Now, someone seeks to take my friend's life. Do you think I should flee? Seabass smirked slightly. Were it not for his familiarity with Mo Lee, he might have believed it. However, Mo Lee's decision to remain was due to his own reasons, and part of it must also be for his own sake, perhaps a 1-to-1 ratio. Seabass pondered inwardly. At this moment, Cole's face was filled with worry. But with the 2 prominent senators returning, can we truly withstand them? If they send an R-class fleet over, the entire star domain could be overturned. And how would we play then? Seabass shook his head slightly. As for the R-class fleet, they can only mobilize within their own jurisdiction. it would be quite difficult for them to reach here. Thus, I estimate that their highest combat power would only be at the Star Ring level. Only the Star Ring level? Cole exclaimed as if he were meeting Seabass for the first time. Do you hear what you were saying? Not only was he astonished, but Seabass himself was taken aback as well. Indeed, why had he uttered such words? His gaze then fell upon Mo Lee, and he suddenly found the answer. The Star Ring level should not pose a problem. Mo Lee's words left Cole wide-eyed. He instinctively wanted to refute, but recalled that this individual, who effortlessly dealt with the pinnacle of divine retribution, made him swallow his words. It seemed he truly possessed such strength. In that case, Seabass, feel free to contact Senator Tokkel and stir the waters here. Mo Lee said earnestly. As for the Crimson Star Scar, there is something you may need to know. What? Seabass inquired, puzzled. In this incident, the people of Crimson Star Scar had indeed suffered the most. From their perspective, they were ready to restore their identities when Mo Lee intervened. This is the information I procured from the Dreamyong Fleet's onboard system. Seabass suddenly turned to the luminous screen Mo Lee had projected, which clearly recorded the fleet's subsequent missions. What? They intend to seize complete control here after Victor's demise and turn it into a breeding ground? Seabass felt a chill run down his spine. Dreamyong had never intended to assist them in restoring their identities. Rather, they sought to exploit the unique circumstances here to create a breeding ground, continuously supplying powerful warriors and manpower. A moment's thought revealed that currently, the best training ground for warriors was the battlefield against the Zerg. However, even Dreamyong would face severe repercussions for attempting to reach there. Under such circumstances, if they wished to cultivate soldiers, they would have to look elsewhere, and coincidentally, the Chaotic Star Domain presented itself as an ideal location. Seabass had harbored this suspicion previously, yet he had no choice but to trust Mo Lee, which was one of the reasons he had never blamed him. After reviewing the fleet's mission, both men felt a weight settle upon their hearts. Cole humorously remarked that the Chaotic Star region, a wretched place that everyone avoids, had curiously caught the attention of these legislators. While I comprehend Ming Yang's intention to cultivate a puppet, I am perplexed by Tucker and Chen Yao's involvement. Mo Lee, somewhat baffled, noted that he only perceived the mission of eliminating Seabass within Chen Yao's fleet, human experimentation, as Seabass lowered his eyelids to speak. Chen Yao and Tucker are aligned in the same faction, supported by a significant demand for live subjects for their research on human experimentation. Presently, Chen Yao is responsible for supplying the populace, reaping considerable profit, while Tucker has long harbored envy. Thus, I deem this a fortuitous opportunity. Though Chen Yao has merely lost a fleet, it is insufficient to erode their internal trust in him completely. The timing for Tucker to usurp him is not yet ripe. However, the rationale we provide for Tucker's presence in the Chaotic Star region will undoubtedly not be overlooked. Cole experienced a moment of clarity, realizing that they could soothe the chaos of the Star region by asserting that what Chen Yao cannot accomplish, I can. Seabass nodded slightly in agreement. Mo Lee, however, cast a curious glance at Seabass. How do you possess such knowledge? He inquired. Ming Yang informed me they are of the same ship, coincidentally. I learned of the business rivalry between Tucker and Chen Yao in recent years. Is that so? Mo Lee mused, lowering his head in contemplation, while his mind urged Xuanji to analyze the inevitable connections among these various elements. Let us further muddy the waters here. Nevertheless, I advise you, Seabass, to ensure that the individuals from the Deep Red Star Scar remain concealed. Mo Lee spoke gravely. A great battle is unavoidable. I understand, Seabass replied. Then you should contact Tucker and ensure he provides ample star currency. Tucker has been particularly irritable of late. Recently, Tucker's pirates, whom he had nurtured in the northern Fallen Star region, were inexplicably annihilated without a trace of information. Had it not been for the discovery of Mech from his fleet being sold in the Chaotic Star region, he would have remained entirely in the dark. Yet, concerning the Chaotic Star region, which is Chen Yao's domain, Tucker's ambition to partake in the spoils had been ignited. Ultimately, he awaited the tumultuous developments in the Chaotic Star region, the fleet battle, during which Chen Yao lost a fleet. Tucker hastily sent communications, asserting that if he intervened, he could undoubtedly stabilize the Chaotic Star region. Yet, the opposing side still sought to give Chen Yao an opportunity, asking him to wait. On what grounds? Tucker seethed, clenching his teeth. What can that incompetent Chen Yao achieve beyond currying favor with them? Contemplating the resources Chen Yao procured each year through the Chaotic Star region, Tucker's jealousy flared bright red in his eyes. Most distressing for Tucker was the realization that the experiment seemed to be nearing its final phase. If successful, it would signify a groundbreaking breakthrough, elevating Chen Yao, who continuously supplied live subjects, to unprecedented heights. With this thought, Tucker felt a surge of madness from his envy. Your Excellency, someone seeks your audience, a voice interrupted, and Tucker snapped back to reality, noticing his assistant cautiously standing behind him. Who? He inquired. Someone from the Chaotic Star region claims to possess 2 fleets available for sale. Talker's pupils constricted sharply. 2 fleets from the Chaotic Star region. The information contained herein is profoundly substantial. Talker forced himself to calm down, his breathing gradually slowing. As his assistant activated the holographic screen, a tall man with gray hair and a solemn expression appeared. Standing upright in a tailored suit and white gloves, he held a clenched fist across his abdomen. Esteemed Senator. Greetings. You may not be familiar with me. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Seabass, though you may refer to me as Victor if you prefer. Without waiting for Tackle's response, Seabass continued. I possess 2 damaged Star Torch-class fleets. I wonder if you might be interested? Tackle's gaze deepened. The fact that the other party had acquired his communication was already remarkable. He had nothing to conceal and replied directly. Let us first assess the quality. Of course, Senator. Seabass turned and pulled up the holographic display, revealing 2 fleets docked in outer space. Tackle's breath became noticeably heavier. This was indeed Chen Yao's fleet. The specifics of the fleet were now inconsequential. What mattered was that this was his pathway into the Chaotic Star domain. Just as Seabass had anticipated, Tackle would not refuse. And in fact, his agreement came somewhat readily. The two engaged in conversation for merely half an hour, reaching a near consensus. A result of Tackle's deliberate restraint to mask his intentions from Seabass. Little did he know, his reactions were all within Seabass's expectations. In truth, Tackle was inclined to agree immediately, but to maintain the facade of a senator, he engaged in a bit of negotiation. After finalizing the details, Seabass had expertly grasped Tackle's intentions. Aside from the unreasonable condition of not being able to make direct payments, Tackle had made every concession possible. Mo Lee and Cole watched throughout, utterly astonished. The composed demeanor of Seabass had made a profound impact on them. Tackle had not hesitated to leverage his status as a senator against him, yet Seabass's expression remained unaltered. Frog Fun, your negotiating prowess is unmatched. Seabass relaxed slightly. He needed something from me, and the same result would apply to Mr. Mo. No. Mo Lee shook his head vigorously, fully aware of his own limitations. He couldn't allow Xuanji to intervene either, as Xuanji had a tendency to precisely gauge the opponent's limits, speaking rather brusquely, which often resulted in others becoming indignant during negotiations. The sensation of having one's boundaries continually tested is not something everyone can endure. Thus, in this regard, Mo Lee genuinely admired Seabass. With Tackle successfully deceived, the remaining time was spent awaiting the actions of the other 2 major senators. Seabass also utilized this interval to secretly relocate the direct lineage of the Crimson Star Scar. As for those star pirates who had surrendered due to their temporary strength, they remained in the Rust Star system. In recent days, the Tekla hub had become increasingly lively. News of the unification of the Crimson Star Scar had spread, attracting many ambitious star pirates. Some aspire to thrive through the deep Crimson Scars, challenging the Federated Empire, while others hope to ascend within the depths of these Crimson Scars, ultimately becoming leaders among the star pirates. It is not uncommon for individuals with ambition to exist, and the deep Crimson Scars welcome all who seek their fortunes. Recently, the security forces at the Teclara hub have significantly increased. Nevertheless, a steady influx of star pirates continues to arrive. Seizing the opportunity, Cole has sold several Judgment-class mechas. When Meng Yang and Chun Yao discovered that their mechas were circulating in the black market, their expressions darkened considerably. This was an unabashed provocation, a slap in the face. Not everyone wishes to witness their subordinates become trophies for others. During this period, Mo Lee has reduced some of his guidance to Qin Wanga, as the Chaotic Star domain has indeed been quite busy. Wow, Mentor, you are already in the Chaotic Star domain? Qin Wanga exclaimed, her eyes filled with astonishment. That's incredible. Is it any surprise? Who do you think I am? Mo Lee responded without a hint of modesty. Mentor, I feel like my mental strength has been advancing rapidly lately. The resources at the academy are truly remarkable. Mo Lee smiled gently. That is good news, but it is also essential to solidify your foundation. Yes, I understand. Additionally, many people have been asking where you have been. Mo Lee's expression darkened. Previously, the points had been useful to him, allowing him to teach Qin Wanga. But now he finds himself at a loss regarding those devices. The Star Ring-class mechas offer no clear direction, and naturally, earning money has become paramount. Although the Academy's points can be converted into currency, they pale in comparison to the profits from trading Judgment-class mechas here. The Academy, no matter how affluent, cannot simply procure Judgment-class mechas at a whim. While the blood debts were somewhat manageable before, with the arrival of new mechas, Mo Lee has now become capable of effortlessly defeating opponents without damaging his own mechas. After chatting with Qin Wanga for a while, Mo Lee connected with Jiang Yin via communication. You've been quite busy in the Chaotic Star domain, haven't you? As soon as the connection was established, Jiang Yin began discussing matters concerning the Chaotic Star domain, clearly possessing channels to acquire information about this area. Although his tone seemed to imply accountability, the smile on his face was uncontainable. How has the Holy Radiance Arbiter been performing? I hope it hasn't brought me shame. It is called the Holy Radiance Arbiter? I only just learned its name. Jiang Yin laughed heartily, a hint of pride gracing his features. The Holy Radiance Arbiter has consumed a great deal of my efforts. I have labored day and night to bring it to fruition. Activating Judgment Mode is enough to render you invincible among Judgment-class mechas. Judgment Mode? What is that? Emoli scratched his head. Are you referring to that ultimate form? I haven't utilized it yet. Jiang Yan's smile faltered. Didn't you defeat 10 Judgment-class mechas? You didn't activate Judgment Mode? No, they were too weak. Jiang Yan regarded Emoli with a peculiar expression, as though observing a marvel. You are well-versed in mechas. Don't you require time? In his view, engaging in battle immediately after the mecha's release seemed implausible. However, the reports indicated that Emoli single-handedly defeated all opposing Judgment-class mechas, something he initially assumed was achieved through the activation of Judgment Mode, but now it appeared otherwise. Did he truly envision a balanced confrontation that instead devolved into a one-sided massacre? Alas, something is amiss. The strength of the Divine Judgment should not have been so formidable. In Standard Mode, he merely sacrificed a crucial shield module for a slight increase in speed, and while the enhancements from the 2 floating artillery units, the Azure Wing and Zero Storm, may have bolstered their offensive capabilities, it should not have been sufficient for Emoli to achieve such a remarkable victory. The more Jiang Yan pondered, the more the situation seemed inexplicable. To contend against 10 opponents, including several peak-tier mechs, one might suspect that they were piloting Star-Ring-class mechs. Yet, he was acutely aware of his own mech's capabilities. It was indeed a peak-tier Divine Judgment. Am I mistaken? Jiang Yan mused, convinced that he must be miscalculating. Furthermore, they appeared too weak. Jiang Yan regarded Emoli with a perplexed expression. Was this truly a conversation befitting of reason? Those elite soldiers serving the counselors were not merely feasting for the sake of indulgence. They aimed to fortify their own powers. This enigma was beyond his comprehension. Shaking his head, he decided to let it be. He could not fathom Emoli. So what brings you here? He inquired. Emoli, adopting a stern countenance, retorted. What do you mean, Jiang? Am I not allowed to visit you? It's improbable. You wouldn't seek me out without reason. Oh, am I so unworthy in your eyes? We share a bond forged in battle, and behold my current mech. It was crafted by your own hands. Emoli exclaimed passionately before shifting the topic. By the way, can you assimilate their warships and mechs? The price is negotiable. Jiang Yan's expression darkened. As expected, Emoli never failed to surprise him. No, it's too far. Our reach at the Star River Academy does not extend that far. Very well, Emoli replied, somewhat disheartened. But what about the mechs? The Star-Ring-class mechs? Jiang Yan responded. Where do you even acquire Star-Ring-class mechs? Such tier is not easily obtainable, and they are seldom found in the black market, with many vying for them. Ahem, they are merely on the way. Jiang Yan felt an unsettling sense that something was amiss. Emoli did not seem like one who possessed Star-Ring-class mechs. And why would he sell them if he could utilize them himself? From the current circumstances surrounding Emoli, it appeared that his true limitations stemmed from the mech rather than his own capabilities. Emoli was undoubtedly at a 100 in terms of synergy, but the mystery of his mental prowess remained. In this context, he should have needed the Star-Ring-class mech even more. Wait, Jiang Yan suddenly raised a hand, signaling Emoli to pause. The Star-Ring class you mentioned, could it possibly belong to a few counselors? Emoli smiled mysteriously. In the chaotic star domain, they come and go without return. Jiang Yan was left utterly speechless. The confidence radiating from Emoli seemed genuine, indicating he possessed undisclosed trump cards. Yet, Jiang Yan harbored his own concerns. Are you certain they will only dispatch Star-Ring class mechs? A singularity class would be even better. Emoli's eyes brightened at the prospect. At this moment, Jiang Yan found himself utterly perplexed by Emoli. He shook his head, unsure of the source of his confidence. However, he could offer a piece of advice. If a Star-Ring level mech truly existed, one should head directly to the Forbidden Star in the Yunming Star Domain, the largest black market in the entire region. If it were genuine, buyers would assist in overcoming any challenges. Noticing the slight widening of Emoli's eyes, Jiang Yan chuckled, assuring him that there was no need for doubt. The allure of a Star-Ring level mech was indeed immense. Emoli was momentarily captivated, sensing a broad avenue unfolding before him. Struggling to suppress his racing heart, he swallowed hard and inquired, how much is a Star-Ring level mech worth in star coins? Jiang Yan cast him a curious glance, bemused by Emoli's sudden nervousness, especially regarding the valuation of a Star-Ring level mech in star coins. With a resigned smile, Jiang Yan explained that such mechs could be considered strategic weapons and were typically exchanged for resources or technology instead of currency. But what would the specific conversion be? Emoli pressed, his eyes slightly reddening. Jiang Yan, taken aback by Emoli's earnestness, found himself puzzled by the young man's fixation on star coins. Unbeknownst to him, Mo Li's pressing need for the energy of the Shifang Ji was significant, and aside from energy, other commodities were largely irrelevant. Only star coins could procure substantial amounts of energy without overly complex transactions. Jiang Yin was momentarily stumped by the inquiry, as such situations were exceedingly rare. The Imperial Federation's focus lay heavily on the Zerg battlefield, and within their territories, starring-level mechs were already at their zenith. Hadn't he observed that even the strongest of star pirates were merely at the heavenly punishment level? Moreover, starring-level pilots were a rarity. Numerous top-tier heavenly punishment pilots awaited their mechs to advance, and the starring-level mechs produced by various factions were in high demand. The few available for auction had fetched exorbitant prices. Seeing Jiang Yan's expression, Mo Li realized he was also at a loss for an estimation. However, he dismissed the concern, reasoning that an auction would ultimately provide assistance in calculating the worth. Contemplating this, Mo Li found himself somewhat eager for time to pass swiftly. Meanwhile, Jiang Yan felt increasingly unable to fathom Mo Li's intentions, pondering how challenging it truly was to acquire a starring-level mech. After a moment's reflection, he decided to shift the subject. By the way, Wang Gu has been performing admirably lately and has successfully been selected for our academy's new student representative team. Of course. Who do you think is training her? Mo Li replied with pride as he spoke of Qin Wang Gu, acknowledging her diligent nature and the effectiveness of his training regimen. By the way, you must know that the new student representative team will represent Dongli Academy in the Federal Academy League, right? Mo Li's face momentarily displayed confusion, but he quickly nodded with a grave expression. I understand. Damn it, Xinji. Hurry and help me figure out what this is. The Federal Academy League is a grand event within the Federation. Each year, the 8 major star domains within the Federation compete to select 2 academies to participate, culminating in a total of 16 academies, with teams from the 1st to 3rd years competing. The first-year competition is exclusively for newcomers, and upon reviewing the individual names, Qin Wang Gu was identified as a substitute candidate for the new student representative team. These thoughts swiftly resurfaced in Mo Li's mind, followed by a soft sigh. Alas, it is unfortunate that this child started later and lacks sufficient talent. A flicker of regret danced in Jiang Yan's eyes. The empathy score did not surpass 95, indicating a significant disparity from those prodigies. Qin Wang's selection into the freshman team, aside from her inherent strength, was partly due to her unique combat mech. As the mentor hoped it could serve as an unexpected advantage. As Jiang Yan spoke, he shifted the topic, inquiring, So, when shall you return? Mo Li, am I required to go back? The affairs in the chaotic star domain may not resolve so swiftly. Though tumult brewed within him, his expression remained grave. Seabass is my closest friend. I could never abandon him. When does the competition commence? In a little over a month. We shall depart in a few days. Traveling from the Dongli star domain to the Yunming star domain will take some time. What venue is it in the Yunming star domain? The timing is manageable. By then, I will have resolved my matters in the chaotic star domain. Yes, that might allow you to make it. Jiang Yin calculated briefly before nodding. Since you have made your decision, I shall not intrude further. Wanga hopes for your presence, and the Academy awaits your news. Especially since this is the first time a student trained by an honor mech pilot has entered the league team. Why? Mo Li understood Qin Wanga's sentiments, but was perplexed by the Academy's stance. It's the policy of the Xinghao Academy. The Academy has always been open to the outside. But not all institutions share this approach. The Academy wishes to showcase that this policy is indeed the correct one. Mo Li suddenly comprehended, realizing they had often been ridiculed. Jiang Yan sighed. Indeed, but little do they know that while this method may have a low ceiling, it at least preserves the baseline for the students. That is certainly true. Thus, do your utmost to attend. If you cannot, they cannot say much. I will consider it. Mo Li nodded earnestly. In truth, why would I not relish in hunting starring-level creatures and amassing wealth here? And I almost forgot to mention, the Academy stated that if you can truly bring honor this time, they would fulfill one of your conditions, provided it is feasible within the Academy. What condition? Can it be a punishment-level mech? Can I exchange it for star coins? Mo Li instinctively inquired. Of course. Upon hearing this, Mo Li's demeanor shifted, realizing the significance of such matters. You ought to have mentioned this sooner. You know I am a mere mortal. Send me the specifics. If the dogs do not go, I shall. That is precisely it. After concluding the communication, Mo Li paced back and forth, meticulously calculating the time. The retaliation from several council members remained uncertain. But both Seabass and Mo Li understood that this would be their most formidable, and likely final, act of vengeance at this level. The previous Star Torch-level fleet had already reached its zenith. Mobilizing such a force surely demanded considerable energy. However, by relinquishing the chaotic star domain, they would not simply acquiesce. Thus they would assess the value of this place and dispatch another group. Most likely, they would deploy mechs of the Star Ring class. As for the Singularity class, that would be somewhat extravagant. Even for council members, it is not so easily summoned. Hence, Seabass and the others speculated that the most they could expect this time would be pilots of the Star Ring class. As long as they endure this wave, it would also serve as a warning to those council members that the chaotic star domain is not as easily conquered as they imagine. If they wish to continue their pursuit here, they must consider whether the returns justify the efforts. They will come, it's just a matter of time. With this thought, Emoli immediately sought out Seabass. Mr. Emo, what is it? Seabass inquired. I have an urgent matter. When will Talker and the others arrive? Talker might take about a month, Seabass replied. As for Ming Yang and Chun Yao, they may also be mobilizing forces. I am not quite sure of the specific timeline. Seabass noticed that Emoli seemed rather peculiar, his impatience palpable. What would they do if several Star Ring mechs truly arrived? Upon hearing this, Emoli's expression darkened. Why is it taking so long? Seabass, with an odd expression, felt an urge to say something but could not find the words. This won't do. Emoli suddenly straightened his posture. Seabass, I believe that sitting idly by is not a wise course of action. We must take the initiative. Seabass, accustomed to following Emoli's line of thought, hesitated. But if we take the initiative, with Meng Yang, Chun Yao, and Talker's 3 factions, none would be here to protect this place. That seems to be the case, Emoli conceded. But is there any way to hasten their arrival? Actually, it isn't that difficult. Currently, all 3 factions must believe that the first to arrive will seize the advantage, so they are likely competing secretly. That won't work. I don't have much time left, Emoli said, shaking his head slightly. Are there any other options? Seeing the urgency in his demeanor, Seabass contemplated for a moment before responding, there is. As Seabass noted, whether it be Chun Yao or Meng Yang, both were urgently reallocating personnel to the chaotic star domain. However, the universe is vast, and even with the most advanced spacecraft, it would take considerable time to reach their destination. Yet, in the days that followed, Meng Yang, Chun Yao, and Talker all received news that individuals from the chaotic star domain were seeking opportunities to engage with other council members. This alarmed the 3. It was clear they intended to approach those council members for protection. The specifics of the conditions were unknown, but it was surmised that it involved capitulation. Although the chaotic star domain is tumultuous, such an offer of land should not be dismissed. After all, it could serve as their own private garden. Moreover, alarmingly, they were not contacting just any council members, but specifically the representative from the Dis faction, bordering the chaotic star domain and the North Falling Star domain. Dis had long harbored intentions towards the chaotic star domain. However, this area was not rich and was plagued by numerous space pirates. The manpower and resources required to forcibly subdue it did not yield proportional returns, leading him to postpone any action. Additionally, the chaotic star domain provided a considerable sum of money each year, making him reluctant to involve himself in the matter. However, if something were truly delivered to his lips, he could not possibly refuse it, even if it meant offending 3 members of parliament simultaneously. After all, they were all parliamentarians, and this was his territory. There was little for Dis to fear. Initially, he had considered dispatching a fleet alongside the Star Ring-class pilots to reclaim the star domain after the battle. Yet now, there was no time to dwell on such matters. Chun Yao and Meng Yang had unanimously decided to send the Star Ring-class pilots to launch a solo raid. Without the fleet, traversing the Stargate became significantly easier. Coupled with the Parliament's most elite spacecraft, both side Star Ring-class pilots arrived at the Tekla hub in a mere 5 days. On Meng Yang's side, there were 2 individuals, while Chun Yao had 1. After the Crimson Star Scar unified the chaotic star domain, the number of vessels traveling between the Tekla hub and the chaotic star domain had visibly increased. Among them was a ship distinctly different in design from others. The vessel was operating in full-speed automatic navigation mode. At the helm sat a man, arms crossed over his chest, with his eyes closed, seemingly in a state of repose. His long hair was tied back in a ponytail, with a few stray strands falling across his forehead, and faint wrinkles adorned his face. A tall, lean man with tattoos covering half of his face turned his seat to face him. Chiang, did Lord Meng Yang send us too for something so trivial? He remarked, stretching and yawning with a slurred speech. I was hoping to take another nap. Eagle, do not underestimate the opponent. Anyone capable of single-handedly battling 10 heavenly punishment level foes must possess strength at the star ring level. The man named Eagle replied nonchalantly. Star ring level, yes, but it depends on the strength hierarchy. You are star ring 6 stars, I am star ring 4 stars. Even the strongest among them would not be our match. As for the remaining space pirates, they are merely a ragtag bunch. We still have 2 hours to go. How boring. I think I'll take a nap. Meanwhile, another ship was cloaked and hurtling towards the Rust Star domain. On board, a solitary figure, a tall, handsome man, was at the helm, his legs crossed atop the control panel, tossing a crimson fruit into the air. With a crisp crunch, he bit into the fruit, juice flowing freely. Lord Qinyao, I have arrived. That would his name, Imoli, right? I trust he will not disappoint. Rest assured, you shall have your fill. Your maniacal laughter will send shivers through Batter's reputation. Xun Yao's voice resonated. Moreover, aside from Imoli, the commander of that fleet will surely dispatch someone as well. Though I am unaware of their faction, it is highly probable they are parliamentarians. They might send 2-star ring-class pilots. 2-star ring-class, you say? A bloodthirsty smile flickered across Batter's face. That should suffice. At that moment, Imoli languidly leaned against the window of the space station, counting the days with mounting impatience. Why haven't they arrived yet? The perimeter of the star domain was lined with numerous detection devices. Any unfamiliar spacecraft entering would be detected immediately. These devices had been upgraded with plans provided by Xuanji, ensuring that even the most advanced vessels could be detected for anomalies. As the time dwindled on the Academy's clock, Imoli felt a growing sense of agitation. Why not confront them directly at the Tekla Hub? Chapter 101. The Vulture, Qiang, Edge of the Rusty Star Domain. Since the last great battle, a vigilant perimeter has been established near the shipping lanes here. Seabass and Imoli have deployed a radar matrix in the vicinity of the cometary debris fields, capable of detecting ships traveling at faster-than-light speeds. Today, the radar matrix, which had been dormant since its installation, suddenly erupted into frenzied activity. Unknown ships have been detected entering the star system at warp speed. The alarm quickly reached Seabass and Xuanji. They are coming. Seabass felt a jolt of awareness. A single vessel, not a fleet. As predicted, it is a high-grade mech. Xuanji's voice echoed, and Imoli's eyes brightened. They have finally arrived. He stretched his body, producing a series of crisp sounds. I have been waiting for quite some time. Turning around, 2 immense hatch doors swung open, revealing the towering figure of the Holy Radiance Judicator, standing over 10 meters tall. The crimson electronic eye flickered to life as the Judicator stepped forward, kneeling on one knee and extending a hand. Imoli stepped onto its massive palm, and as the Judicator rose, its chest armor opened, allowing Imoli to enter within. System initialization in progress. Synaptic nerve connection successful. A cold mechanical voice announced as all systems within the mech rapidly powered up. Floating cannon module, operational. Scarlet judgment weapon module, operational. Core power furnace, functional. Thrusters. With a series of self-checks completed, Imoli's vision gradually clarified as he assumed the perspective of the Holy Radiance Judicator. All self-checks complete. No anomalies detected. Welcome, Marshal from the Empire. At that moment, the electronic voice abruptly transformed into Xuanji's familiar tone. A slight smile tugged at Imoli's lips. Then let us proceed. With a click, the wings of the floating cannons unfurled slightly, and both sets of thrusters ignited simultaneously. The heavy doors of the spaceport swung open, revealing the dark expanse of space beyond. With a hum, the Holy Radiance Judicator shuddered as the thrusters unleashed 4 blazing trails of fire. As the doors fully opened, Imoli focused his thoughts, and the Judicator surged forward. This was a spaceport beyond the Rusty Star, and upon exiting, Imoli directed his course towards the ship that the radar matrix had locked onto. The vessel had only just entered the star domain before dropping out of warp, now advancing under pulse engines at a swift pace, quickly approaching the Rusty Star. On the ship, Qiang and the Vulture detected the unmasked presence of Imoli. I wondered why there were no ships intercepting us. Only a single mech has emerged? The Vulture leaned forward in his seat, seemingly eager to discern the mech's appearance from the images projected by the sensors. The intelligence indicated that there is only one formidable opponent here. I shall confront him. Qiang shook his head slightly, saying, we should go together. The Council has activated our royal mounts not for mere amusement. The mission is paramount. Hearing the mention of the Council, the Vulture's expression stiffened slightly, yet he ultimately dismissed the notion of engaging alone. The priority of the legislators is paramount, and Qiang clearly wishes to avoid any unforeseen incidents. Let us proceed and eliminate him together. The 2 rose and made their way to the rear cabin of the spacecraft. In no time, 2 mechs soared out from the belly of the ship. One was black, with hints of crimson energy swirling about it, crowned by a long, pointed horn, and sporting a rather incongruous mechanical wing on its back. The other mech resembled molten rock, with a massive antimatter reactor at its core, visibly pulsating. What set it apart was its dual wielding of fiery swords. As the 2 exited the cabin, they were immediately locked onto by Imoli. The swiftness and long-range precision of the lock took them both by surprise, prompting simultaneous evasive maneuvers. In the next moment, 2 beams of light streaked through the space they had just occupied. Ha! Our opponent is formidable. The harpy cackled maniacally over their channel, retracting its wing and extending its thruster flames, dramatically increasing its speed. Be cautious. A typical Heavenly Punishment class does not possess such distant fire control locking capabilities. If we were at that level, those 2 shots would have gone undetected, one remarked. I am well aware. However, the greater the peril, the more exhilarated I become. Qi shook his head slightly. The harpy was indeed a battle maniac, utterly mad once the fight commenced. Both parties surged towards each other. Qi activating the fire control radar. At the star ring level, the locking time was rapid, taking no more than a couple of seconds at most, and even less than a second at best. Just as Qi pondered this, he suddenly observed Mo Li's flight speed soaring abnormally high on the detection system. Meanwhile, the harpy had already charged ahead, its pointed horn gleaming ominously like a spear, eschewing long-range weaponry and heading straight for Mo Li. Naturally, Mo Li's detection system had also identified the two, and the floating cannons on the Saintly Radiance Judicator had engaged speed burst mode, embedded in its back, to enhance mobility, allowing Mo Li to outpace the average Heavenly Punishment class. Gazing at the feedback from the detection system, Mo Li mused inwardly. One is as steady as a rock, while the other is a berserker. As the harpy drew closer, Mo Li grinned wickedly. Let us see who is truly the more reckless. With the activation of the Crimson Judgment module, a compartment at Mo Li's waist opened, and he retrieved the crimson blade. Boom! The red sword erupted forth, filling the air with violent energy. Gripping the sword with both hands, Mo Li executed a peculiar maneuver to evade Qi fire control lock, then adjusted his position so that the approaching harpy aligned with him and Qi. In that moment, as the harpy neared, the Crimson Judgment was unleashed with a fierce swing. The blade cleaved the air, shattering the harpy's form simultaneously. An illusion, this module appears to belong to the Dominance Technology sector. The area of technological deployment, the pointed horn. Xuanji commenced calculations based on combat data, and Mo Li felt a chilling aura approaching from behind. He swiftly turned and struck with his sword. The surging energy collided with a dark object, which was then repelled, tracing an uncanny arc back to the distant harpy. At that moment, Mo Li discerned that the black object was, in fact, the single wing affixed to his opponent's back. It was surmised that this module was a product of hegemonic technology, equipped with the functionality of a floating cannon. Indeed, as Xuanji's words echoed, the harpy flung the single wing once more. Now Mo Li could see that the wing was adorned with several small thrusters, and propelled by his throw. It nearly reached him in an instant. Detecting spatial fluctuations, he remained alert for a shift, originally intending to deflect it again. Mo Li's pupils constricted as he maximized the output power of his Crimson Judgment, causing the sword's blade to expand to twice its size in an instant. The harpy, poised to initiate a jump after 1 second, witnessed the sudden surge in energy from Mo Li's Crimson Judgment and felt his pupils contract in alarm. How could the opponent have known? This fleeting thought crossed his mind as he vanished from his position, reappearing before Mo Li, who was brandishing the dual Crimson Judgments in a furious strike. Never before had the harpy felt death so imminently close. Reacting instinctively, he activated his energy shield. But as the Crimson Judgment struck, the energy level readings of the harpy's mech system skyrocketed. What sort of weapon is this? The harpy screamed, realizing that his shield would not withstand for long under such pressure. In a critical moment, his teammate Qi arrived, launching a rapid side assault that forced Mo Li to retract his sword and retreat. The harpy, shaken yet relieved to escape calamity, eyed the crimson lightsaber with caution. There was something peculiar about that weapon. Hegemonic technology, Qi asserted decisively. This is certainly not an ordinary lightsaber. It had the harpy utterly terrified. The Crimson Judgment was indeed a product of hegemonic technology, specifically commissioned by Mo Li. Ever since being compelled to withdraw from the arena after a virtual battle, Mo Li had been plagued by a mental burden. The performance of the mech could falter, and its level could be low, but the weaponry must never be weak. The humiliation of being defenseless still rooted deeply within him. If his opponent were genuinely formidable, he could accept it. However, the enemy was clearly weak yet managed to defeat him through sheer mechanical prowess and reckless maneuvers, a reality Mo Li could not abide. Thus, whether it was the Blood Debt or the Holy Radiance Judgment, the weaponry was maximized to its full potential. The Holy Radiance Judgment's Crimson Judgment and the two floating cannons employed multiple forms of hegemonic technology, nearly exhausting Jiang Yan's resources. In fact, in pursuit of weapon potency, even the crucial shield functionality was sacrificed, and the resulting strike nearly instilled terror in the harpy. Qi furrowed his brow, recognizing that this mech exhibited exaggerated mobility and power, certainly a star ring class. I don't know, but we must not be complacent. The council was right to send us both. The harpy grimly declared. Let us finish him. Together. Although the harpy appeared arrogant, he became exceedingly serious when faced with genuine threat. Two figures approached from either side, prompting the Holy Radiance Judgment to lock onto them with its floating cannons. The duo moved at astonishing speed, evading the targeting systems with deft maneuvers akin to the initial assault. Just as the lock-on seemed imminent, they either accelerated abruptly, executed sharp turns, or climbed steeply to avoid detection. Qi Yang, amid his agile movements, drew his fingers together, transforming his wrists into hollow tubes. Positioning his hands behind him, the tubes erupted with flames, propelling him forward with immense thrust. Observing this, the harpy, trailing behind, swiftly detached a single wing from its back and hurled it towards Qi Yang. In a flash, he occupied the space of the discarded wing, preparing to launch it again. They were now considerably closer to Mo Li, whose speed was unparalleled among the judgment level, yet still lagged at the star ring level. The two advanced rapidly, and as Qi Yang extinguished the flames from his hands, he paused momentarily before aiming at Mo Li. Just as the high-energy plasma warning from the Xuanji system began to sound, Mo Li forcefully yanked his mech upwards. The Crimson Judgment, foreseeing the attack, struck precisely at the Harpy's throne wing. From a distance, the Harpy smirked. The wing, once deflected, stabilized in space with its small thrusters before gathering energy. Mo Li was almost instantly locked on by the targeting system, leaving no time for contemplation. He redirected his wings forward and fired. The floating cannon's precision struck the Harpy's energy cannon, causing an explosive burst in the void. Meanwhile, Mo Li was not idle, as Qi Yang had already launched his assault. High-energy particle beams coalesced into blade-like forms at his wrists. He executed a cross-slash from below, confident that without a shield, he could fragment Mo Li. However, activating the shield would result in the excessive consumption of his energy by his own blades. Mo Li, anticipating this strike, dodged in midair with a graceful spin. Utilizing the torque from his rotation and the assistance of his leg thrusters, merging all kinetic energy into a singular force. Qi Yang's pupils constricted. While others might activate their shields in such a scenario, his infernal blade tyrant had other options. A surge of plasma erupted from various parts of his mech, enveloping him as if submerged in lava. Mo Li's whip kick successfully sent him flying, but the special coating on the legs of the Holy Radiance Judgment experienced severe fluctuations before failing. The legs charred black, compelling Mo Li to abandon his pursuit of Qi Yang. His opponent's mech appeared somewhat enigmatic, seemingly possessing a reflective damage capability. A flicker of shadow above heralded the Harpy's arrival, brandishing a pair of curved blades, akin to a specter aiming to sever Mo Li's throat. In that instant, the two floating cannons embedded themselves in Mo Li's hands, transforming into colossal blades. With all engines ignited, Mo Li narrowly evaded the Harpy's strike, believing he had succeeded in dodging, only for the Harpy to reappear in close proximity once more. The grotesque visage of the wingless apostle appeared to mock its adversaries. There was no evading the incoming strike. Even if a shield were activated, it would be futile, for lurking behind him was the formidable flame blade tyrant, brimming with high-energy plasma. Given the machine's formidable offensive capabilities, one could surmise its defensive attributes would be somewhat lacking, particularly against the corrosive onslaught of the flame blade tyrant. As these thoughts crossed the mind of the vulture, the Holy Radiance Arbiter suddenly vanished from sight. A spatial leap? A fleeting expression of shock crossed the faces of the two, followed by a surge of wariness. Lacking the powerful AI computational support that Xuanji possessed, they were utterly incapable of deducing Mo Li's landing point from the residual ripples of the spatial transition. In the next instant, Mo Li materialized behind the vulture, the Scarlet Judgment raised high. Upon witnessing this, Qi Yang shouted in warning, "Be careful." The vulture sensed the impending peril and, in a heartbeat, overloaded its systems to propel itself forward with utmost velocity. Qi Yang, undeterred, extended his arms, plasma shimmering with radiant brilliance as countless energy projectiles surged forth. The vulture initially believed it had evaded danger, only to be startled by the frenzied alerts of the fire control system locking onto its frame. It then realized that when Mo Li had appeared, he bore not the pair of floating cannons, but the Scarlet Judgment instead. Within the detection range, the floating cannons had inexplicably merged into a single entity, their barrel aglow with a concentrated beam of light that erupted with thunderous intensity. In the previous engagement, the shield had been depleted of considerable energy, and faced with such an evidently potent attack, the vulture instinctively opted for evasion. The azure energy coursing from its single wing enveloped its form, causing it to vanish in an instant. Simultaneously, within the cockpit of Mo Li, who was engaged in combat with Qi Yang from afar, a rapid succession of alerts flooded the screen. Spatial transition detected. Calculating. Within less than 0.2 seconds, the screen was filled with a multitude of notifications, and then, to Qi Yang's astonishment, Mo Li's figure vanished from sight. In the distance, as the vulture completed its leap and re-emerged, it had scarcely a moment to breathe when Qi Yang's voice echoed through the channel. "Hurry. He is targeting you." The vulture was momentarily taken aback, instinctively attempting to activate its mech, only to find the wingless apostle felt heavier than ever before. No matter how fervently it called upon its systems, there was no response. A flash of white caught the vulture's attention. Looking up, It beheld the white armor of the Holy Radiance Arbiter alongside the Scarlet Judgment embedded in its cockpit. What? The Vulture's question was destined to remain unanswered, as Qi Yang, equally astonished, realized he had witnessed Mo Li vanish, only to appear nearly simultaneously with the Vulture. The time difference between them was less than 0.2 seconds. Those familiar with the workings of a leap engine would be aware that each transition induces a brief disorientation, the duration of which varies with individual constitution, though rigorous training can mitigate such effects to near insignificance. However, even at the star ring level, when trained to perfection, a fleeting moment of dizziness is inevitable. It seemed that the Holy Radiance Arbiter had capitalized on this brief instant to launch a decisive strike. In mere moments, Qi Yang had gathered a wealth of information. For instance, the lightsaber wielded by the effortlessly overwhelming Vulture, or the terrifying computational prowess of the opponent, capable of predicting jump points, and the fact that they had never activated their shields from beginning to end. Contemplating this, Qi Yang was suddenly consumed by an inexplicable surge of fury. Why? Why not deploy the shields? Even when he had just suppressed them with a barrage, the opponent had not engaged their defenses, relying solely on their formidable agility to evade. To Qi Yang, this was nothing short of mockery. Do they look down on me? Very well. With gritted teeth, Qi Yang gradually increased the engine's output, the plasma enveloping his form in ever greater abundance, appearing as though he were bathed in flames from a distance. Explode. With a low shout from Qi Yang, the thrusters behind the engine reacted with a burst of plasma, unleashing a tremendous conflagration that bestowed upon him an unparalleled surge of kinetic energy. Coupled with the thrusters, he swiftly closed in on Mo Li, twin swords poised for attack. Boom. The detection of a nuclear fusion reaction. What the hell? Are you playing with nuclear explosions? Mo Li was taken aback, instinctively making a jump to escape. The brilliance behind him flickered and vanished, while the blazing Inferno Blade Tyrant had already locked onto him once more. At this moment, Qi Yang entered an overload state, his velocity becoming astonishingly fast. As soon as Mo Li completed his jump, Qi Yang was almost upon him. This was not a matter of predicting landing points like Mo Li did with his celestial calculations. It was a relentless acceleration upon witnessing his emergence. The Scarlet Judgment suddenly elongated, entering an overload state, as Mo Li denied him the opportunity to close the gap, executing a horizontal slash. Qi Yang parried with his twin swords, light flashing once more. Bursting forth from the explosion's flames, a flicker of light danced upon Mo Li's frame, a testament to the special coating at work. Right leg damaged 13. The alarm blared. The coating on his right leg that had just been breached ultimately sustained injuries from the explosion. Turning his gaze, he saw Qi Yang charging towards him silently, the plasma swirling around his dual blades providing a stable precondition for a nuclear explosion. Mo Li's heart raced, and in a panic, he jumped again. But this time the distance was markedly shorter. A smirk played upon Qi Yang's lips. How much energy do you have left for jumping? With another nuclear explosion strike, Mo Li could only leap away, while Qi Yang relentlessly pursued, offering no respite. After several consecutive jumps, the distance between them diminished further, and Qi Yang's grin grew even wider. His mech's energy reserves far exceeded those of a standard mech, as the plasma energy was significantly more economical, allowing for an extended overload mode. In fact, to sustain prolonged overload without damaging the mech, his mech was equipped with a stabilizing technology derived from hegemonic advancements. Upon re-emerging from another jump, the thruster flames of Mo Li's mech were noticeably weakened. Qi Yang's eyes gleamed with excitement, and he relinquished all restraint, accelerating yet again. Mo Li seemed to panic, retreating rapidly. Run, are you? Qi Yang let out a sinister laugh, and as he closed the distance to Mo Li, the plasma surged with a ferocity greater than ever before. The brilliance flickered, as though a new star had ignited in the cosmos. Yet, Qi Yang felt no tangible contact with his target. In the scanning system, Mo Li's figure loomed in the distance, causing Qi Yang's pupils to instinctively constrict. This distance. Raising his gaze, the fiery tail flames of the judgment of sacred radiance were intense, the engine's energy surging forth. Did it seem devoid of power? A deception. The hegemonic technology cherished by the Galaxy Academy, the energy convergence circuit. How splendid. The energy consumption is remarkably low, isn't it? Mo Li chuckled, observing the dim plasma on Qi Yang's mech surface, and took a step forward. In an instant, her figure vanished from sight, prompting Qi Yang to reflexively raise his dual blades in defense. The Scarlet Judgment descended fiercely, but rather than unleashing a nuclear explosion, it was Qi Yang who was forced to retreat. Mo Li advanced with agility, the Scarlet Judgment swirling in her grasp, leaving Qi Yang with no choice but to fend off her relentless attacks. The warning alarms of low energy echoed, and Qi Yang finally panicked, requesting a connection to the public channel. Yet, Mo Li remained indifferent, akin to an emotionless machine, striking with the Scarlet Judgment sword after sword, each one lethal. His request for a public channel sank into oblivion, and Qi Yang's heart plummeted to despair. He had no energy left to resist. The prolonged overload had drained him, and now, faced with Mo Li's tempestuous onslaught, he was retreating steadily. Ultimately, no miracle occurred. Mo Li delivered a fatal strike that breached his cabin. After extracting the Scarlet Judgment, she did not summon Seabass and the others to clean up the battlefield, but instead spoke directly on the public channel. Have you watched long enough? After a few seconds of silence, a spaceship slowly materialized in the distant void. Atop the vessel sat a mech, one hand resting upon its knee. Can Batul actually detect me? Batul's voice resonated. Impressive, you managed to slay them all. His tone elicited a hint of impatience from Mo Li. Stop pretending and come at me already. Ha ha, kid, you're quite amusing. I can hardly wait to hear your screams. This is not a block. 3 chapters have already been completed. The performance is dismal. I still strive for a daily update of 6,000 words. The ratings and scores are abysmally low. Please, send some electricity and favorable reviews to rescue this child. In the 104th installment, White Rainbow Singularity Gun. Batul gazed at Mo Li with growing intrigue. He had encountered numerous prodigies, yet ultimately, these so-called geniuses met their demise under his torment. Batul derived immense pleasure from subjecting these alleged talents to suffering, relishing the contrast between their initial pride and their subsequent tears of desperation. He delighted in such disparities. Currently, Mo Li's arrogance and confidence surpassed those of the geniuses he had previously defeated. The contrast after defeating such a person should be even more pronounced, he mused, his anticipation mounting. With a powerful push, he propelled the entire spaceship backward, then surged forth, activating the thrusters and accelerating rapidly. The acceleration exhibited by the opponent elicited a raised eyebrow from Mo Li. Clearly, based on this velocity, he had surpassed the majority of those at the star ring level. The distance between them was minimal, vanishing in an instant. Batul wielded a pair of spikes seemingly connected to his arms. His left and right arms were black and white, respectively, creating an eerie impression. Rarely did Batul employ ranged attacks. In his view, leaving a series of punctures on his adversaries with his dual spikes was far more exhilarating. Batul was remarkably swift, and before Mo Li could even establish a fire control lock, he had already surged forward. The dual spikes thrust forward, prompting Mo Li to raise his Crimson Judgment in defense, while the floating cannons on his back activated simultaneously. Yet, before him, Batul darted like a nimble swallow, evading the 2 shots from Mo Li's floating cannons with a mere shift of his form. Too slow. Batul suddenly emitted a series of chilling laughs, declaring that such speed was insufficient to contend with him. Just moments ago, hadn't Mo Li been overloaded? He crossed his dual spikes to parry Mo Li's descending sword strike. Then, after deflecting him, the black spike emanated a dense black light, thrusting forward with relentless intent. Detection of a special nanocluster and unique energy field. Do not engage directly. Upon hearing Xuanji's warning, Mo Li instinctively suppressed his urge to parry with his sword and quickly adjusted his thrusters to retreat at high speed. As Batul's thrust missed its mark, he appeared somewhat surprised, yet swiftly regained his composure, closing in on Mo Li once more. It seems you are well aware of my weapon. His black spikes were equipped with an advanced entropy disintegration molecular blade, capable of inducing accelerated entropy or directional molecular dissociation in target substances. It forcibly disrupted molecular bonds, causing structural collapse and disintegration, manifesting as an intensely severe and irresistible corrosive effect. Just moments ago, whether by activating his shield or using Crimson Judgment for defense, Mo Li would have been instantaneously eroded. Unexpectedly, he sensed something amiss upon their first encounter, a realization that had eluded every previous adversary who had faced him, all of whom had suffered greatly. Nevertheless, this acute combat intuition only heightened Batul's excitement. Splendid. You truly are impressive. Batul cackled as he lunged forward, delivering thrust after thrust, compelling Mo Li to evade continuously. Such a weapon, capable of disregarding shields and armor, provided a significant advantage in combat. Even Mo Li found himself at a loss for a better response. As Batul's relentless assaults were continuously dodged, his laughter became akin to a psychological assault on Mo Li, prompting him to decisively shut down the public channel. Unbeknownst to Batul, who continued to laugh maniacally, he wondered what had happened to the earlier arrogance. Mo Li retreated time and again, and at this juncture, Batul recognized that his opponent's agility was far from ordinary. It was crucial to note that his mech was a level ahead of Mo Li, separated by the vast chasm of the star ring level. Their speeds were not even comparable. Logically, Mo Li should not have been able to evade at all. Yet, with each of Batul's strikes, he felt as if his every move had been foreseen, with Mo Li relying solely on his terrifying predictive ability to evade Batul's attacks. You truly continue to astonish me. Once again, after a swift evasion, Batul suddenly unleashed the previously dormant white spines. The gravitational field distortion effect has been detected. Mo Lee's pupils constricted. Could it be that gravitational weaponry had arrived? There was no longer any room for hesitation. With a mere thought, the Holy Radiance Arbiter's engine began to overload, directing an unparalleled surge of energy throughout its transmission systems. At this moment, the surface of the Holy Radiance Arbiter shimmered with a faint, ethereal white light, a manifestation of energy dissipating into brilliance. Boom! 6 robust tail flames erupted